time Darwin was looking at Baba, I think it was in the museum room up on the hill. Baba said, let's take a break and you look at me for 5 minutes. And he was looking at Baba, and Baba just began removing veils and everything until he was face to face with the ocean of divine love. And no, Baba's physical form was completely gone. And then very gradually, Baba came back into form. So there's the formless and the form right in front of his eyes.
Jeff, I have a question too.
Yeah.
My question is about last week, that section of the spiritual bypass.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just wondering if anybody could say more, explain more. I reread it numerous times and I need some clarification.
I'll leave it up to, I can mention it, but like Mayor Prasad has probably got it, knows how to explain.
Oh, I'll let other people say something. And if something occurs to me, I'll say something.
Well, this is as I understand it. We have our shadow side and then we have the light in us. Sometimes we have to work at extricating ourselves from the shadows. But sometimes if we can turn to the light, we can bypass the shadows. In other words, if you have an option of working through something and struggling with it, psychologically, you say, or you have a chance to turn to Baba directly, and if you got enough that holds you there, you can melt away the shadows. The light will kind of disperse the shadows. But, that's an option. But whether we can do it, whether the shadows have us too kind of firmly in their grip, our selfishness, our sanskaras.
Right.
If we can kind of free up ourselves enough from the sanskaras and go directly to Baba's presence, we're taking a bypass. That's one, that's the bypass. We can bypass going through the city. We can take the bypass around the city.
Okay.
But sometimes you're already in the city and you got to try to get out to the bypass at your earliest convenience. But now there's another definition of the bypass, which is bypassing the whole spiritual path and going directly to Baba. In other words, rather than going up through the planes and realizing our spiritual potential, we just turn toward Baba's presence and make that our focus and bypass even the spiritual path. That's a major thing, because the spiritual path is very attractive and tempting, and you feel like you're getting somewhere. Whereas if you turn directly to Baba, he's just going to efface you. He's going to hollow you out rather than let you climb. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm getting it. But when you say turn to Baba's presence, is that the same as repeating Baba's name, like the whole thing about the like a net around you so that nothing, your thoughts don't enter? Or is this like really feeling Baba's presence inside? How would, I'm just...
Well, I think anything you do, like reading some of Baba's words, singing about Baba, doing something loving for him, dancing for him, gardening for him, anything you do, that all runs to him. It all goes to him. And so you are, whether you're feeling Baba spectacularly or you're just feeling him kind of as a warmth, but it's all leading to him.
I see.
Anything that is a type of remembrance of Baba.
I see.
But it's like I say, you can go shopping for Baba to the grocery store. You can make that something you do with Baba.
Mm.
Even if you invite him along and you don't even feel him, but invite him along anyway.
Yeah.
You are moving away from the psychological, you might say, and moving into being with him. And he's kind of right at our level. You don't have to go up to him. You have to kind of go up to the spiritual path, but with Baba, you just have to look over your shoulder, kind of. He's that close.
I see.
I mean, that's just, but anyone else that has an interpretation of what Darwin meant by a spiritual bypass. You got a sense of that?
No, I agree with what you said there. I think that's exactly the way Darwin talked about it. And as far as Baba's presence went, for both Darwin and Jean, Baba was right there with them, right beside them. And that's what I learned from Darwin, is to just have Baba right there beside you.
Yeah, if you have a chance, Erich used to say, when you remember to remember anything, remember him. When it occurs to you to remember, then remember him. But anything, just whatever leads back to him. And it doesn't have to be Baba work, so to speak. It can be doing something that might entertain Baba. You might find that entertains him. Or you go for a walk, and with each step you go ba 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 ba. Any by hook or crook.
Jeff, it's Ferris Dave.
Yeah.
He asked us to make him our constant companion. So boil it down to basically talking to him all day long.
Well, yeah. But like I say, if you're not quite, that may work on a particular stretch of the day.
Yeah, that's true.
And then, but also, although it'd be good to talk about it sometimes, it's also important to forget yourself. Get deeply into activities and you forget yourself, and then Baba can live through you, but you're not aware of him. Self-forgetfulness and Baba remembrance are complementary. But sometime we'll talk about that, because I got that directly from Erich. The importance of getting into what you're doing wholeheartedly, and you forget Baba altogether. But he then can live through you, even if you're not aware of it. Like I asked the Margaret Crass dancers, who were almost all of them devoted to Baba. I said, did you remember Baba and they were in these big stage productions, serious, ballet. Did you remember Baba when you were out on the stage? And they said, no, it didn't work. They would remember Baba before they went out on the stage. They would dance and get into it thoroughly, and they would remember him afterwards. And that's how Baba told people too, so, but all of those are the bypass, I would say. But that's it's a very good question. Anybody else have anything to say about the spiritual bypass, which we read last week? Angela, you're just sitting up there,
I'm just sitting here waiting for hands up, if there's any hands up.
No, but I mean, what about a spiritual bypass? You have a...
Yeah, I mean, I guess the conversation has definitely been the Darwin Shaw version of spiritual bypass, kind of that image of hollowing out. That I remember I had asked you once about that, and it seems that if we can hold on to Baba's Dhamma so firmly that we kind of just don't contemplate the distractions. Oh, yeah, the image. Remember that story you told? So there was this American tourist that was visiting India, and so she'd seen the Taj Mahal, she'd seen this, she'd seen all sorts of fun things. She ends up in Mehrabad, and I think it was Baba, right? Baba says, "How did you enjoy the sights?" "Oh, Baba, they were lovely, so many wonderful sights." Baba says, "You haven't seen anything yet. Just wait till you enter the path and the sights that you'll see then." And it strikes me that we need this spiritual bypass because it's so distracting. Being on the gross plane is distracting enough, but once we're on the planes, it's so easy to get stuck, to get distracted, to enjoy the scenery and get lost hanging out on
Yeah.
the planes.
Yeah, Baba says the subtle world is vaster than this one, and it's taken us lifetimes just to learn our multiplication tables and adding. I mean, you know, to get to know that all the cultures and everything, well, it's even vaster. So Baba's trying to get us to bypass spending a long time in the subtle realm and in the mental realm.
Martha's got her hand up.
Who?
Martha.
Oh, Martha. Okay.
Hi. Yeah,
Yeah.
this particular word has kind of caught my ear last week, and I just been thinking about it. And I'll read the sentence right before it. It says, "I will teach you how to move in the world, yet be at all times in inward communication with me as the infinite being." And then it says, "I feel that this applies to each one of us in accordance with our capability and interest in taking the spiritual bypass." What do you think he means by our capability? I'm always thinking that, holy mackerel, I'm not capable about anything, but what do you think he means?
Well, I think I always feel like, you know, be practical in the world and do what you can in the world, but inwardly you always have Baba there at the background. And you know, if it's I mean, I was always surprised that Darwin just took this job at the traffic department. He could have been the mayor of Schenectady. He could have been one of the leading figures in the city of Schenectady. And he just went up about 2 rungs in the traffic department and stopped. He didn't use his talents and abilities as we're kind of educated to do. He found a lower rung where he could satisfy the requirement of earning his living and remember Baba at the same time. He wasn't tempted to go higher and higher. For me, that was an eye-opener when I lived there. I thought, wow, I was kind of geared to kind of make use of my talents and abilities in the world to the max. And here's a guy that's so talented, so centered, so large, and he's just settling for an obscure job. You know, it made a deep impression. Darwin once said, there comes a time in your spiritual life where you could become anything. You could become a famous writer, a famous dancer, a famous painter, you could an orator and everything. And he even said you have to bypass that and just go with Baba. What's that? No, I remember him saying that. I mean, and he had done that. He didn't get tempted by worldly accomplishment, even at the highest creative levels. He just even bypassed that. And if he had, we wouldn't be here at this screen, all of us, if he had gone that way instead of writing this book that is so rich and helpful, you know. Yeah.
Meher Prasad has his hand up.
Yeah. Where, yeah, Meher Prasad.
Yeah. So my interpretation of the spiritual bypass is Darwin is saying that we should be aware of Baba doing it through us constantly. And he gives a hint in the next paragraph on that. But you know, it's like the dance example you gave, and thinking of Baba before and after. But if you can do it while dancing as well, that it is Baba doing it, it requires a tremendous amount of awareness all the time. And he says that it requires a lot of self-awareness. But my interpretation of that is basically constantly being aware that it is Baba doing it through us.
Yeah. Yeah. Excellent. Yeah. I once said to Merwan Jesawala, you know, Baba, that's Erich's brother. And Baba used to say when he was a kid, see that boy over there? He's a saint. This is when he was just a kid. But I said to Merwan, you know, I've tried the provisional ego where Baba, you're speaking, Baba, you're going into work, Baba, you're doing this and that. And I'll do it for sometimes for months on end, and it's kind of liberating and everything. But I told him I've never been able to make it stick. And Merwan said, well, then do this. If you go to the store, you know, say, Baba, I'm going to the store, come with me. I'm going to have a lunch here at this little restaurant. You come and be with me. And even said, Baba, I got to go piddle. You come with me. You know. So, and I take him with you. And I said, yeah, that sounds like plan B. You know, plan A is if you can really see that it is Baba living your life. But if not, at least bring him along. That was what Merwan was saying. So I don't know if that makes sense, but that at that time in my life, that was doable more than that Baba is doing everything. You know, to be conscious of that, where I'm just a vehicle and he's living through me. That's harder. In other words, we kind of move into these things when we're ready, you might say. You know, when Alan Manukian, you know, fields all these complaints all day on the phone, you know, he takes it all as Baba just, you know, harassing him. He has to answer complaints from customers. And his hair is usually combed straight down and close to his head, but this is what he looks like at the end of the day, all roughed up.
There's a few hands up.
Yeah.
This is an interesting subject. Larry, go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jeff. About the spiritual bypass on page 68, right under the first sentence under the title, the spiritual bypass, it says at a certain point, if we have enough spiritual maturity, that's what's required, however.
Yeah. Yeah.
We realize that the conditioned level, this is the level where I am being conditioned by my thoughts, words, actions, and my sanskaras, that the conditioned level is brought forth because of imagination, and therefore it's not as substantial as it appears. And then you go, so it tells you that we realize that a conditioned level is brought forth because of imagination, and therefore it's not substantial. We become aware that we can bypass the whole level and all our previous methods for deconditioning our minds and start to burn through the walls of the spiral. And under the new paragraph, a new paradigm on the next page, it says, when we take the spiritual bypass, we are standing upon the truth within. We create a new paradigm of who I am, a paradigm based on one's ideal, the beloved, and we stick to it through thick and thin. So that is that provisional ego, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah.
My methodology of doing that, because I'm always thinking of methodologies, is I'm very affirmative. I don't ask Baba for things usually. Sometimes I slip, or sometimes I decide to do that. But what I do is to achieve this new concept of who I am, I use affirmations. When I wake up in the morning, I think to myself, this is an incredible day, Baba. And this is how I talk to Baba. Baba, today, your presence is so alive within me. Allow me to feel it. This day, I have so many things to do, Baba. I am going to accomplish them with your energy. I'm going to accomplish them quickly, easily, and beautifully. And because I am you, and because I am expressing as you, any challenge today, Baba, that comes before me is handled so beautifully, so divinely. It is absolutely amazing. Anyway, that's how I talk to Mayor Baba.
Yeah.
So when I go into a situation, I'm already conditioned with my new paradigm. I'm the new Larry Pesta. I'm not dealing with the old Larry Pesta.
Yeah.
I've forgotten about him. I don't like him. I don't want to be around him. I'm into this new guy. I'm into the new paradigm. So my suggestion, as somebody who understands Darwin's background, just be affirmative.
Yeah.
Baba always used, don't ask me for anything. I don't do miracles. He said miracles are based on your own faith. And he told his lovers not to ask him for anything because the thing they were supposed to do is achieve the realization as best as they can that they were an expression of him on this planet. And that's the consciousness you live in. What else can it be? When somebody, when I'm not feeling well, my first thought is usually, oh, I'm sick. But the second one is, okay, I'm feeling sickness, but let's realize the truth here. Mayor Baba is in control of this body. Mayor, do you see what I'm doing?
Yeah.
That's my way of slipping into that. You know,
Yeah.
somebody can take it or leave it. If there's confusion, that's what I.
No, you're moving right into the bypass. You know, that's the best. I mean, I think I start my day. I mean, I try to get, you know, where on an airplane you kind of come up through the clouds, and finally you get above the clouds, and you know the light is there. You know, I have to kind of work until I get to that place, and then my day starts from there down, so to speak.
Yeah.
I don't like to start my day in the clouds, you know, because then I bump into all sorts of things. Yeah.
You have to take care of yourself in the morning. That's the best time.
Yeah. Yeah. Boy. No,
Yeah.
it's fabulous how many different camera angles there are on this Life with Baba, and how many inroads, how each person comes up with unique ways of connecting in with Baba. And at the same time, I benefit by hearing other people's approach, like what you just said, affirms and confirms a lot for me. And I'll take it on board, you know. I don't feel like, oh, I got just my way, because my way may include so many different approaches that.
And there are many approaches, and they're kind of all authorized by Mayor Baba. I'm amazed. Since the 1960s until now, every spirituality has really dug into their processes and methodologies. I mean, there's mindfulness from the Buddhists. There's this. I mean, it's incredible the way Baba has instigated all these processes in different religions and things. That's his job.
Yeah, and you're like in a cafeteria, and you just kind of, you know, take whatever's, they go through the vegetables, and you go through the protein things,
Yeah.
the desserts.
Many ways to do it.
Yeah.
This pre-meeting conversation has been so intense. We've got
Oh
four
my
more hands
God.
up.
Uh-oh.
Do we want a moment of silence, or do we want to just go through these hands?
Yeah, let's have a moment of silence. Jai Baba. So I think everybody here, most everybody knows the format. Angela will terrify you by asking you to read. No, you can pass if you want. And we read a section, and then people can ask questions or share or relate to, give examples of of what Darwin says. And just to mention that the next section of the books have to do with a very, very important distinction that needs to be made in our inner life. And if Baba succeeds in making it possible in us, we will have a very harmonized and rich inner life. And that distinction is between what Darwin refers to as the scale of good and bad on the one hand, and love on the other, which is beyond good and bad. So the distinction is there is between really the highest good in us and love. Being able to make that distinction. And just to say that in our early childhood, most of us found ourselves, we lived in a realm of spontaneous love, and, you know, with the divine qualities of innocence and playfulness and wonder and joy. But then years roll by, and we go to school, and our parents teach us, and in school we learn to evaluate things from the standpoint or in terms of good and bad and right and wrong. And that becomes our conditioning. But now, you know, because of our inner life with Baba, he is inviting us to go beyond our conditioning of good and bad into the realm of love. And there's a beautiful a quote from, who is it? Victor Hugo, the French novelist, where he says, he says it very succinctly, virtue, as in the case of vice, is a calculated action. But love is not calculated. It wells up in the heart and expresses itself spontaneously. So you might say good as well as bad is a calculated action. Not that it's bad, but I mean, it's different from love, which is spontaneous. It wells up in the heart and expresses itself spontaneously. And the kind of love that Bob is inviting us to experience is beyond our conditioning. I mean, love comes from beyond the sanskaras. This is what I'm, you know, gathered from Darwin and my own inner experience. Love comes from beyond the sanskaras, from the other dimension, although it does have to express itself through our sanskaras. It loses some of its beauty by the time it passes through us, but it comes from the other dimension. And the highest good that we are capable of is still in the realm of sanskaras and our conditioning. And in even the highest expression of good is a reflection of love. but it's not the source of love. So, you know, because good involves effort of willpower and intention and motive and everything, whereas love is just expressed freely, and there's an expansiveness. So to be able to make that distinction and not always act from good, but to wait and let love be the promptus. And in cultivating goodness, well, one thing that Baba says is we go from bad to, our journey is we go from bad to good to God or love. So in cultivating goodness, we come very close to the realm of love, but it's good, Baba says, is not the ultimate goal. And the many expressions of good that we do are like training wheels until love, with its intuition, its spontaneity, its and Baba's presence, the goodness is training wheels until love takes over and can travel on its own independently. So we're being shifted from the deepest, from our highest good over into love itself. So I'm just saying that because it's a distinction that comes up in the next sections, and it's a little hard to follow sometimes, but there's a qualitative difference between good and love. So that's my spiel.
And a good one. All right, so we are on page 74 in the book. That is page 44 in the PDF, the section entitled Good Bad Scale. How about Dan Sparks?
The good bad scale. We have been basing our value, our sense of self, on a scale of good and bad, but we must discard that scale as we rise above the dual level. Casting aside the good bad scale does not mean that we discard responsibility or the values of good and bad in our actions. We must develop the good before we break free of it. Therefore, as we advance spiritually, we continue trying to do good, while at the same time setting aside the burden of the good-bad scale. However, goodness is not meant to be a goal in itself. Baba says, goodness is the means by which the soul annihilates its own ignorance. It is a byproduct of raising the consciousness and is a necessary step toward selflessness. As such, it is not meant to be focused on, but more or less ignored. Setting aside the good-bad scale is a gradual process. We may start out feeling, I did this, or I was good, or I was bad. But eventually we say, I did the best I could. We neither seek recognition nor beat ourselves up about anything. We rest in the knowledge that Baba has an image of us in which we are free on the gross level. We find that we are happier when we pursue this course of setting aside the good-bad scale and identifying with Baba's image of us. We experience upliftment of the spirit rather than of the ego, and we gradually move into freer levels of consciousness. In other words, we are expanding our consciousness and at the same time trying not to expand the I. It becomes a matter of personal unfoldment.
You can see how very subtle that is. But anyone, any comments? Any questions or any examples of the dilemma of that.
I just wondering, like, there's so many like Sufi stories and things where you go from good to bad to good to bad. It's not always straightforward on the good. So just thinking about that.
Yeah, although the overall trajectory is from bad to good to God. But yeah, there may be some setbacks along the way.
They're not even setbacks, though. It's just
Yeah.
you have to go on the continuum of all the opposites.
Yeah.
Through our lives and everything. So we can't judge. God can, but like we can't judge by somebody being bad. They may be way ahead of us.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So,
Yeah, they may be just on the pendulum is swung over on that side, but our pendulum may be ready to swing way on past them into the bad, you know.
or not. Yeah, right.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thought also maybe this is how like Baba can be letting a pandemic and worldwide catastrophes happening because it seems to be bad. But in his overall love for us, and he knows we're going to come back, it's love. Does that at all like fit in with this article that Darwin wrote this section, or is this more focusing on the I and that thing I did the best I could? Thanks.
Yeah, you mean you're taking it up on the collective level. I mean, Darwin is, I think, talking about more on the personal level.
All right, but right. So it's not talking about Baba, what Baba does, loving us and letting things happen because he loves us and he's not thinking about, well, this is good or bad. No, he says in the end, it's, no, thank you.
Yeah, no, but the pandemic, I'm sure, is waking people up. And so it appears bad on the surface, but it may, I mean, it's better than a nuclear war for waking us up, you might say. Yeah.
I was going to give an example that I felt at first was inspired from a love place in myself, but as I ruminated about what I was going to say, I then adopted an I place. So where this is going to come from, I'm not really sure, but I was just thinking of how easy it is to feel the inspiration from a place of love. Like, oh, I know exactly this experience. I experience this all the time, or I'm recently struggling with this. But then but then that impulse quickly has to filter through, my sanskaras, my ego, and then it's easy if I'm not careful for it to then become an I sharing as opposed to a love sharing. I'm not really even sure where I'm going with this anymore, so I'll stop here. Yeah. But it's really tricky. I'll leave it with this. It's very tricky to know, to even let's not even say tricky. I found it challenging to stay, and I had to work really. I'm having to work now even to be speaking from a love space rather than an I space, so that it's that it's helpful, whether it's for others or for myself. So it's work. How much I'll say, it's work.
Yeah, a very good distinction. I like say, I mean, just give an example, like I might decide to do something would be generous, putting on a birthday party for somebody. And, it's the love coming out through me with love. But then, and I do all the thing and but then it has to percolate through me, it has to percolate through my selfishness and and all of that, so that afterwards, some people really like the party and some people, oh God, that was a terrible party and everything. And I'm taking it personally, So, I don't, and I can't say, oh, well, I was just all ego. I just say there's going to be a little bit of ego in it, but there's going to be, if the predominance is love, go with it. It's not going to, by the time love comes through me, it has to go through the filter of me, and it loses a lot of its luster and purity and pristineness. But you don't want to just throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah.
You know, the mind will come along and say, "Oh, you're taking that was just an ego trip," you know, and so it'll discredit something that originated from love.
Yeah, I was even just working right now with myself as you were giving your example, how helpful it was for me to then give over to Baba what I just said, and the result of what I said, and the, you know, where it came from in myself, giving it over to Baba, I found very helpful for getting back into like my heart space.
Yeah, yeah.
And not worrying about, you know, whether it was an I statement or a love statement or whatnot.
Yeah. You don't want to wake up the Doberman pincer there, the ego, if you can help it.
All right, Jack.
Yeah, you know, before Baba, I would assume that all of us were caught up in a real play of the opposites, in the sense that growing up there was good and evil, you know, and sin and not sin or whatever, and all that juxtaposition of separateness, where we try to avoid one and do the other. And then Baba comes along and gives us a linear model that does not have opposites. Well, it has the stages of and degrees of goodness. From least good, which obviously most people would call evil, but it's not true, because there is even goodness in that. And so we go through our life evaluating things, and Baba, in bringing this linear model up, eliminates the evaluation. And if we just get rid of the blame and get rid of the judgments and get rid of the justification, all that stuff goes away.
Yeah.
And it brings about a feeling of, well, I'm going to feel that. I'm going to judge things, and I'm going to justify it in my own mind. But it's the outward expression of those particular being in blaming everything because you turn a corner or whatever and bumped into somebody, and you know. So I think if there's a valid attempt on the part of each of us to work at that, you'll find a different. You get into a different living space with yourself.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at anyway.
Yeah. No, that's good. We can do anything to you, Jack.
Yeah. Christ. I'm totally defensible.
Yeah, hi. I've been listening to a lot of the videos from the Mayor Center offerings that they send out every week. And you get a sense of what Baba did and how he approached people in a lot of situations. And also reading stories about Baba and Darwin's books. And I was thinking when we were talking about this, that sometimes if I pause a little bit before I take any action, I can feel a loving spirit, which I know is Baba.
Yeah.
I don't often pay attention, but when I do, and then I thought, well, let me try it this week. And I kept asking myself, well, what would Baba do in this situation? Yeah. Because in some situations, my judgment of somebody's bad action might really be their good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or vice versa. So anyway, it helps me if I ask myself, what would Baba do? And then sometimes there's this flow of love and an opportunity for me to almost mimic Baba in some way with my own personality, I guess. And I don't feel that as Darwin's talking about, I don't feel that ego as much. There is an expansiveness there. So that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to ask, well, what Bob in this?
Good. Yeah.
It helps.
Yeah. Excellent. Excellent. Yeah.
Something like what Heidi said, as I look at what's happening in the White House, I've become very aware recently so much good is going to evolve from so much bad, because there will be so many social justice movements that will flower into such incredible civil rights on so many levels for African Americans and Hispanics, the Me Too movement with women, and just this whole constitution that we see that will become really so consciously used in the way it was intended. I see so many wonderful, and this just came about over the last week. I am so grateful that I'm beginning to be aware from what we are seeing on that news. Wonderful seeds of growth are going to be taking place. So something like Heidi said, you see, something that's not good, that you think is not good, but what seems to be not good, which I would think a lot is not good and causes pain and suffering. Still in all, in my dualistic mind, I do call it bad. I do call pain and suffering bad. What do I know? I was calling the shots. It's way beyond my minimal intelligence. But one thing I do know, at least I think I know, is so many wonderful things will ensue over the next several years as a result of so many people in pain and suffering these past, let's just say, even, well, without putting a number on it, many good things will happen from the, a lot of.
Yeah, this would be very interesting to see how this all unfolds. But it is all growth, even if it's the growth the hard way or a little more smoothly. We are all making our way toward the divine. But I think we're on the local train right now.
And Paula?
Yeah, I'm back here in the text. Because the part that got me was when we pursue this course of setting aside the good and bad scale and identifying Baba's image of us, identifying with Baba's image of us. And my mind went, holy smokes, how would I know what Baba's image of me is? And then I went back and it says, well, we rest in the knowledge that Baba has an image of us in which we are free of the gross level. And I'm still thinking, holy smokes. And then I can see where that would be an upliftment of the spirit, but I think I kind of don't. It's like looking at myself through Baba's eyes and like he sees us for himself in us. Is that what I'm reading? It's like he sees our spirit, he sees what's real about us. It really caught me, and it's like, holy moly, what is Baba's image of me or of anyone?
Yeah, you Paula, you that was very great detective work, because that's a phrase that, well, I'll tell you one thing. That one time I said that when the people were here at the center in the 50s, we think that it's all peaceful and everybody's mellow and laid back, but there were a lot of conflicts. Certain people didn't want to stay in the same cabin as somebody else, and there was a lot of this stuff going on. And a little bit of prejudice and stuff like that. And I said to Darwin, Baba saw all this going on. What was his response to it? Because, I mean, Darwin himself could see it. And Darwin said, Baba seemed to be oblivious. And in a way, Darwin said, when Baba looked at you, he saw your soul. He didn't see this little imperfect personality in front of him. He saw our essence, our largeness, and he wasn't put off by the clothes we were wearing, so to speak, the personality. And so I think that image of Baba's image of us is to be in our soul and free, and not bound down in our little straitjacket of a personality, you might say.
So just to remember that, or try to remember that, is an upliftment of the spirit, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When we die, we're gonna. It's gonna be great, because you get out of this body, and you're. It's like you say, you come above the clouds, and it's all spacious and vast. Until we reincarnate again, and we got to come back.
And Peter.
Hi. Yeah, wow, I'm sure about sharing after all that. But I've been wrestling with mosquitoes outside. With this section, good and bad is something I've often wrestled with quite a bit. And there was a professional I went to that said that nobody he knew considered it more than I did. But I think also I probably fell short more than most people do. And something that somebody made a comment about the subtle differences, and reminded me something that Erich had said in his book. And would it be okay if I read a couple paragraphs?
Yeah, go ahead.
Apropos right here. I just hope that my phone lasts. This is from That's How It Was. What should we do? And I have it bracketed and highlighted here. It says, again and again, it comes back to the same truth. Live a normal life. All these questions, what is good? What is bad? Should I do this? Should I refrain from doing this? Will it feed my ego if I do it? But if I don't, isn't that simply being selfish? And so on ad infinitum. There's no end to questions, and there's no end to answers to these questions. Don't get involved in trying to figure it out. Oh, I needed this a long time ago. I just have nothing but figuring it out. Mayor Baba wants us to lead an ordinary, normal life in accordance with how you are inwardly guided. Do what you feel intuitively prompted to do, but all the same, this should be based on the solid foundation of being his. Whatever you do, whatever you undertake, dedicate it to him. Don't even think, is it right? Is it wrong? Is it good or bad? Is it a strength or a weakness? Just dedicate everything to him. Gradually, dishonesty will fade. Gradually, other things will fade, and more unadulterated love and honesty will grow. You cannot begin with a clean slate, as it were. You must begin from where you are. We all have weaknesses, but analyzing and dissecting our motives, trying to understand whether we are being prompted by selfishness or unselfishness, will not eliminate our weaknesses. It will only drive us crazy and impossible for us to do anything. The only way to get rid of our selfishness is to go ahead and do something, but dedicate it to him. And I'll just say that when dealing with multiple issues in my life, I used to go to like Emily Post, see what Emily Post would do. What is the appropriate thing to do? But when it came to like when my mom was going to hospice or family drama, whatever the case may have been, over and over again, I went to spiritual mentors and say, what do you do? And they said, we can't answer this question for you. We really can't. You have to go to God with this. And over again, when I was wrestling with the solution, whenever I could, I would lean on this discourse as much as I could. Just be there and remember him, remember Mayor Baba as I could. So just want to share that. Thanks.
Boy, beautiful passage, and it's so true. I mean, so helpful. I'm really glad you picked that, because it's Eric says it very clearly, beautifully. and down at on the practical level.
Right. I think few people make it as simple as Arch does.
Have you still got that page, Peter? Larry Pesta was wondering what it's, that's how it was. What page?
The specific page was 256.
256.
Right, and the name of the story is What Should We Do?
Yeah.
I can repeat that if necessary.
Yeah.
The pendulum swings back and forth between I am good and I am bad until we see that we are neither good nor bad. Baba discusses the difficulty we often have of realizing that our goodness is a limitation. It is not that we dismantle our good, but that we dismantle our abode of identification with good, by perceiving that it is yet another limitation that we must shed. Our identity is the problem. Before we realize the truth that we are neither good nor bad, we think we have to be one or the other. We tend to try to make a good ego rather than simply let the ego dissolve. It is the psychological secret that if we are willing to drop the assertion of good, we can slough off the bad. For example, if you have done something that makes you feel, I am bad, you cannot just say, I renounce that I am bad, because it implies that instead, I am good. This is what is meant by the pendulum swinging back and forth. However, you can say, I renounce that I am either good or bad. As a spirit, I am free. A radical way to rise above the good and bad is to counteract false judgment, I am bad, by recognizing and asserting, I am not good. This is not another way of saying, I am bad. It is a way of stopping the pendulum altogether by denying the ego stance of, I am good. Only when the pendulum is stopped can we rise above the dual level. Applying the analogy of a chess game, we are using our reasoning minds to make certain moves to counteract those of the limited ego. To make this rather surprising chess move from I am bad to I am not good, we have to be willing to let go of the idea that I am good. In this way, we nullify both of those self-judgments and open the way to the truth, which is beyond good and bad. This is a big blow to the limited ego. It is all part of the chess game of what Baba calls the conquest of the unconscious.
Just fabulous insights, the way he's written this. Any comments? Any? Is that what Darwin has said clear?
I'm stuck on the part where he says, a radical way to rise above good and bad is to counteract the false judgment, I am bad, by recognizing and asserting I am not good. This is not another way of saying I am bad. It is a way of stopping the pendulum altogether by denying the ego stance of I am good. That does not make sense to me.
It's just trying to stop the identification of being either good or bad. Just don't identify with being good and don't identify with being bad. And then you can move into a neutral place and hopefully you rise above these characterizations of ourself. I know it's very it's very tricky. He doesn't know, Darwin doesn't usually get this abstract in a way. It's not really abstract, but the language is kind of abstract, but it's based on, it's experiential. But you have to say, I'm not good, and you have to assert, I'm not bad, in order to get above the good bad scale, you know. And it is really difficult. It is because we are conditioned to react in those ways. I can see Anne McAvoy raising her hand.
I don't think about my being good or my being bad, but I do think about, I don't even think about being good in general, but there are certain things I do that I think are wrong, things that I shouldn't do, things that I'm sure Baba would not be pleased with. But the other thinking, identifying the whole being with I am good or bad, doesn't happen with me. Just the assessment of individual not good behaviors.
Excellent. Excellent. Gandhi used to say, condemn the action, but not the man. And we can kind of apply that to ourselves.
Right.
I have a good joke about that.
Oh, good. Come out with it.
So years ago, with the way parenting was going, there was a cartoon, and the little boy, like Dennis the Menace, was standing with his parents looking at the house that had burned to the ground. And they said to him, it's not you that we're upset with, honey, it's what you did.
Yeah. Good. There's a deep truth in that too.
And Jake and Katie?
That is so funny that you just told that joke, because I was feeling challenged understanding this passage, and then complicating it further by thinking about child rearing and how you raise your children this way, like being able to teach them about destructive behaviors, but not have them internalize that. So it's really, really funny that you shared that. But so that's really my I was looking for some more examples, some more clarification on like living this way. And then also if you have any child rearing tips, anybody.
Yeah, because you have to kind of give them some guidelines, but you want to keep love in there too. So it takes great subtlety to do it.
Jake and Katie, I had someone tell me when I was working, it was a doctor who said, because I was talking about my kids, and he said, she was a Filipina, please just keep on telling them the same thing over and over as much as you, but with love. And that was, I think, you're firm, but you say it with love, and you have to do it a lot. That was, for Jake and Katie. And then the other thing I wanted to mention was my first point was just about the I am good, I am bad. It's like Baba said, neti. We should be, I am not this, I am not that. That's almost like the same thing of just not divorcing yourself, but getting away from that judgmental part. That's thank you.
Giving up perfectionism is a major hurdle. Yeah.
This is in response to what Anne was saying. It seems to me that Anne kind of got beyond good and bad into, would this please Baba or not please Baba? And that, it kind of gets into a really practical, do I do this or do I not do this? Would it please him?
Yeah. Beautiful. Yep. Yeah, that takes you out of the good, bad, right, and wrong in the societal sense, you might say. Yeah.
And Leica.
Yeah, for me, it's the identification with the behavior and defining myself by a behavior, and it helps me to just think of the nature of samskaras. And we all have our own samskaras that are individual to our soul, and we have samskaras that are about our which sex we are this lifetime, which country we're born in, our familiar samskaras, where we went to school. I mean, there's so many different samskaras that contribute to behaviors. But when we say I'm good or I'm bad, we're identifying ourselves with the behavior, whatever that is. And to me, that's like a little prison. It keeps me limited. It keeps me in that limited thinking and judgment of self, judgment of others. And if I can remember to just that the behaviors are the sanskaras, that we have choice, that what Paula said about what would please Baba, which is our guideline because we love him. Yeah, and neti. I'm not this, I'm not that, I'm the soul. And from the soul's point of view, I get clarity of, where I want to go from here instead of just kind of sitting in a I'm good or I'm bad. Either place is a little prison. Thanks.
Yeah, very clear.
Hello.
Sure, you want to read?
Yeah, I'll read. Sustained by grace. When we realize that the ego is clinging to a particular stance, we can make these kinds of counteracting chess moves. For example, instead of trying to protect and preserve our ego stance, we can assert, I am nothing. If we are not prepared to take the bold step of asserting our nothingness, we can say, I am sustained by Baba's grace, and therefore, I, as the ego self, am nothing. And in fact, we are sustained not by our goodness or badness, but by Master's grace. Grace deals with sin, weakness, by raising our consciousness and dispelling our notions of being subject to the causes of so-called sin. Because grace has within its context omnipotence, for grace is synonymous with truth and divine love. We eventually stop basing our sense of who we are on the illusionary values of good and bad and accept without sustained by grace.
Beautiful. Yeah. Any questions or comments? Any examples?
Ray, go ahead.
Just the comment that we are sustained by the Master's grace. That is pretty wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Not pretty wonderful. Pretty one. No, it's really something. Thank you.
Yeah, when I was living up in Schenectady near Darwin, and we were kind of trying to let go of things and everything, and we felt such a void, such a nothingness. And Darwin, said, don't forget there's the fullness behind it. You're sustained by Baba is behind you. I mean, we were just kind of aware of the nothingness that we were kind of found ourselves in. But then he made just a gesture. He raised his hands in front of his heart, and wow, we felt the fullness. So Baba just filled the void. But that was an example of there's a fullness behind it that's sustaining our nothingness. Yeah.
And Cindy, go ahead.
I am so struck with that this, if we take the stance, I am nothing, and then knowing that we still need self-worth without self-aggrandizement. But I like how Darwin qualifies it. If we're not prepared to take that bold step, we can say, I'm sustained by Baba's grace, and therefore I, as the ego self, I am nothing. And that helps qualify it for me as the ego self, I am nothing. So it's not this false humility or false modesty that suppresses, but I and the ego self are nothing. And I'm just like so acutely aware of these days that when I identify with good or bad, I suffer equally. And if I get stuck in that spiral, it's merciless until I finally let go. And yesterday, I would say, and the day before, I suffered mercilessly at the notion of the judgment of good and bad of myself. And then the shifting into today and reading this, I just feel this sense of just such lightness and laughter, like silly rabbit. What a waste of mental construct when, I'm nothing.
Yeah.
But but that fullness, as you just described, Jeff, is just, it's amazing the difference a day makes. And then I know every week when I come to this, Baba's going to cook something up so I can then see it so beautifully. Sometimes it's cooking up like exquisiteness that I would call as positive, and sometimes it's negative, but that's all the judgment of good and bad. It's like Baba's grace. So I just wanted to share that experience.
Great, Cynthia.
I have a difficulty understanding this line. Grace deals with sin, weakness, that line.
Yeah. Well, anyone want to respond to that?
Paul had his hand up before. Did you have something to say, Jeff?
Well, one of the things it says is that it deals with it by kind of rising above it, rather than trying to deal with this sin or this weakness. You try to just rise above it. Like Einstein said, no problem can be solved with the same consciousness that went into creating it. So sometimes we're trying to get rid of our weaknesses from the consciousness that that weakness came out of. But by rising up above with grace, a lot of these things get worked out from that level. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. But that's a very good that you spotted that.
And Paul, go ahead.
I read Baba's prayers every day, and then I do the prayer of repentance. And I always really set my sights on the almost the very last part where he said, in your unbounded mercy, we ask you to forgive us, O God, for all these sins committed by us, and to forgive us for our constant failures. And I accentuate that all the time, to think and speak and act according to your will. And we constantly fail, but he still loves us and forgives us.
Yeah.
And I take that to heart. I really, really take it to heart.
Beautiful. You underline just the thing. Yeah, it's the faults are going to be there till the very end. Just a moment before realization, there's still going to be stuff we could repent for.
Yeah, every day.
Constant failures. I once said to Erich, I said, we all know how Baba treated Bao Kaochuri, and he was always, Baba's always finding fault with him, and he couldn't ever do anything right. And for months on end, how did Baba relate to you? What was your relationship to Baba? And Erich said, and this is in Mandalay Hall, and Erich was very thoughtful, and he said, Baba was always very good to me. I had self-knowledge. And inside I thought, Erich, what are you saying? But immediately said, I knew that I was a scoundrel. And whenever I did anything wrong, I knew. And I would look over at those all-knowing eyes of Baba's, and I knew that he knew. So what was there to say? Here's one of the best people on earth, you know, and he's still falling short. But, you know, but as Erich, what I gather from it, as Erich, he would be selfish, left to his own devices. But because he has Baba in him, and there's love coming through him, he was one of the most loving people on earth. But the selfishness is still there, and Baba, you know, as long as you invite Baba to keep eclipsing it, you're okay. You know, but right to the very end, Erich would say, Baba, he was saying the prayer of repentance right up to the end.
So he was a scoundrel by being selfish? Is that what he meant?
Yeah, but you know, it didn't affect his self-esteem, but he just knew, left to his own devices, without Baba there, he would be selfish. But because he has invited Baba in to live his life, he's rescued from his inherent selfishness. You know, his ego is inherently selfish. But as long as Baba eclipses the ego, we got this very loving human being, Erich. I don't know if that makes sense. Does that clear it all, Robin?
I guess just the word scoundrel is kind of like, doesn't seem like, you know, that he had some tendencies of being selfish. And
yeah, he wasn't joking. He was dead serious. I listened closely. He was dead serious about that, his assessment. And the reason that Bob was finding fault with Balkashuri in the beginning, because he didn't come to that understanding until later. You know, and whenever Baba caught him up on something, he would say, yes, Baba, I was selfish there.
And this is a little off, but whenever I see the word sin, which I didn't grow up with, but I always wonder if it just means like separation from God. That that's our sin, is that we don't get that we're one. And everything that's wrong is based on that, all our weaknesses.
Yeah, it's an archery term. When you miss the bullseye, when you miss the mark, they would yell sin. So it means you haven't hit the right note. As long as you're not hitting the right note, you're sinning. But it's not a moral pejorative. It's, I mean, yeah.
I've got 6 hands up. And Jack, go ahead.
Yeah, well, you guys pretty much responded to what I was going to talk about. But, you know, without divine grace, in which obviously Baba's love is divine grace, we're nothing. And it's his grace that dissolves everything we do. Every moment that we do becomes the dead, frozen past, as he calls it. So it's kind of up to us not to let what we do get the better of us, no matter whether we can be good or bad. Just let it be and continue on doing what he really asked us to do, and that's do everything that would be at his pleasure.
Yeah, excellent.
Thank you.
And Jake and Katie. Jake.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on the line that Dipti talked about. The grace deals with sin by raising our consciousness and dispelling our notions of being the subject to the cause of so-called sin. And also connecting that to what you shared, Jeff, about, you know, kind of rising above, and please correct me if I'm wrong, rising above that particular action and to not get caught up in the action or the outcome of the action. And particularly I was thinking of, in my own personal work, there are times where I have to really deal with and look at a particular action that I've done and the causes and consequences of those actions to help me realize and recognize, you know, how I affect other people. Or even taking it to examples of effort and grace, you know, at times when I'm trying to take the time to give things to Baba, I'm trying to do that from a place of first really being aware of the feeling of whatever it might be, feeling it, and then giving it over to Baba. And so here, you know, this idea of rising above is not necessarily counter to that, but or it is counter to that, but not in a negative way. I'm just curious if you can say more of how to, or actually before I even ask that question, I was gonna say, in my mind, I think of, we have to first deal with some, you know, things fully before we can then earn the grace of then rising above, perhaps. And I'm just curious if you could say more about the connection between, you know, doing the work head on and facing and feeling things, so that you're really in the trenches versus, and then also when the rising above comes. If you have anything to comment about that.
Yeah. I mean, there are two ways. I mean, sometimes you can just rise above and not get so caught up in how you, in your behavior. But if you take your behavior seriously, I did something that was unkind. Well, for me, then I have to work with that, feel it, and give it to Baba before the grace comes and I rise above it. But sometimes, you know, you can make some stupid mistake and you can just rise above it without dwelling on it. Sometimes you have that option. But usually if you do something that's selfish or hurtful and everything, I know I have to work with it and give it to Baba so that eventually it does dissolve. And that's, like you say, being down in the trenches.
Right. Yeah. No, that definitely makes sense, and it helps clarify that for me. It's like
sometimes you have to apologize. You have to even do something, apologize for having, you know, snapped at somebody. And that may be the thing that kind of clears, that in itself may be an act of Baba's grace to get you to apologize. And then you're kind of frees you up from snapping at somebody, you know. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to end with, I really liked the part where you say, like, you have to feel it. Like, if you're really feeling it and owning it, what you've done, then that's the work. That's the work you need to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Darwin used to say, you can't heal what you don't feel. You know, you have to feel it and then give it, not just, oh, hey, Baba, you know, I give you that, you know, that argument I had with somebody, take it, you know. You got to kind of get in there and feel your part in the argument that created negativity or something. Yeah.
Peter Salamasi?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I hope I don't step on toes with this question, but I just wanted to try and attempt getting clarity. I don't know if it is answerable for me. I just wanted to see if I can get a little bit more insight with that reference to Harrods being a scoundrel. I actually went as far a couple days ago to look it up, see what scoundrel meant, and trying to think what was the definition that I came up with here. It said something about a dishonest or unscrupulous person, a rogue. And when I looked at that, I remembered a movie that had a great general. I think it was Patton, that was going through the Philippines, and he was in some kind of ego race with another general to arrive somewhere. And you saw a scene where he brought his men, division, his whoever it was, he wanted to go over a bridge, and he saw an oxen in a cart, and he just got his men through the cattle or the ox in the carriage or whatever equipment was there in the river, just threw it right over. I also remember the story of 99 Murders, and I see references to Hazrat Babajan, that she used to be, she had her own legacy. But when looking at Erich being a scoundrel, I mean, I could see him in his insane pace going through, needing to just bump somebody over if he had to get something done and saying, oops. Not sure where to go with this, but I was wondering if it could be expanded on or not. I just wanted to bring it up. See if anything could be clarified a bit. How someone like Erich could be considered. I'm not saying he wasn't, but it just doesn't make that much sense.
Yeah, I mean, what I took it, Erich is just describing the nature of the ego. The ego is a scoundrel, and the soul is God. I mean, the ego is for itself, after itself. Whether it's Erich's ego or anybody else's ego, it's into separateness, and it's into me. So in that sense, it is always it's a scoundrel. But because of Baba, we invite his grace in and ask him to help and eclipse us, our behavior, we are rescued from being, a total scoundrel,
Was when Erich called himself a scoundrel. First of all, that's a sort of archaic term, I suspect, for you younger people. But also, if Erich was coming from a higher plane, or a higher place, not higher plane, but it could, to him, anything he did that wasn't what Baba wanted could have been made him classify himself as a scoundrel. Or maybe he was just exaggerating.
Yeah. Yeah, he certainly didn't have the low esteem that would accompany somebody who felt they were really a scoundrel. Who, Angela?
Judy Robertson?
Oh, I didn't hear you say that. I have something from a comment, Jeff, that you made a while back now about weaknesses. It's a quote from Baba, and Baba talks in the quote about his love. And to me, Baba's love is the essence of his grace and virtually inseparable from it. It begins, I love you. Do not worry about your weaknesses. Eventually they will go. Even if they linger, love will one day consume them. Everything disappears in the ocean of love. Because I love you, you have a pool of love within you. When you feel wretched, when you fall in your weakness, have a dip in that pool of love. Refresh yourself in that pool of my love within you. It's always there. Even if you wash your weaknesses every day in that pool, it will remain clear. Don't worry, Baba loves you. That is what really matters.
Excellent, Judy. Beautiful quote. Yeah. You know, we say, well, why do we have weaknesses? But if we didn't have weaknesses, we wouldn't have much empathy. That's, I've found in my own life, and you may find that all the terrible things I've done in life have given me empathy for others. You know, because I can understand why they did why they're doing what they're doing. So rather than contributing to a bad self-image, it did before Baba, but with Baba, all of these things that I've done that were selfish connect me through empathy with others. So even weaknesses can be very positive in that sense.
So I'm going back to two sentences. I'm just going to read them again.
Good.
Grace deals with sin, weaknesses, by raising our consciousness and dispelling our notions of being subject to the causes of so-called sin, because grace has within its context omnipotence. And then the last sentence, we must eventually stop basing our sense of who we are on the illusory values of good and bad and accept being sustained by grace. So I was having a real problem with that, just like some other people, and was trying to figure out what do they mean by the context of omnipotence. But after all of your comments, I had an insight that I hadn't had before. It seems to me that what is being said here is that our focus, like a camera, has to shift from the idolatry of ourselves and our own thinking, which is whether something is good or bad, to the adoration of God, who is omnipotent and who has grace. And so we have to make the shift from ourselves, good, bad thinking, to the focus on God. And once we do that, and his omnipotence and his grace, then we get relief, just like the quote that was just read.
Yeah. Excellent. Yep. Wow. Well said.
Oh, and
oops, sorry.
I had one more thing. That word scoundrel. So my first degree was English literature, so I really like words. Scoundrel has kind of a meaning of a comic meaning to it as well. Like, you're such a scoundrel, but you say it in kind of a more comical way. So I don't know what Erich meant. Jeff, you knew Erich. I never met him, but I can imagine that he said it kind of tongue in cheek, knowing that there are parts of him that were scoundrel-like, but knowing again who he was. I mean, he was with Baba, so he was not 100% scoundrel. There's, you know.
Yeah. Well, he had aboard tons and tons of love on his ship, you know. But I did feel at the time he was serious, but he was describing what the nature of the ego, which is, you know, is just selfish. But the nice thing about the ego, it can beg Baba for his grace, and we're relieved of our selfishness, you know. Anyone else there? We're coming down.
We've got 3 more hands. Is that Laurice?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Hi. So there are a couple reflections I have in terms of the bad and good, that because of the way I was raised in an addictive family with a lot of criticism, I had a lot of shame, and I couldn't have named it as shame, but it was like low self-esteem. And I think, because then you feel, you know, innately bad or not good enough, that kind of stuff. And I really feel that Baba, and then shame about things you've done, or, like, we're all imperfect. I really feel like Baba healed me of all of that stuff. I mean, I also did a lot of other outside work, but in terms of feeling truly forgiven and for everything, right? And the readings that were shared about, the pool of love and the prayer of repentance. I mean, there's some days I'll say the prayer of repentance and I'll remember something that was a little off. Like maybe I forgot it. My ego forgot it. And I'm like, ooh, I'm so glad I'm saying this prayer. I could just throw that in, And the other thing is, in terms of the ego and separation and conflict with other people, so it's interesting always when I ask Baba what I should do about a certain situation, and the ego sometimes wants to forget what he says to me. And watching where when I just do what Baba says, how that's very different than when it's like, oh, I didn't do what Baba told me to do, and look at these consequences. And then the last thing I want to share is when my husband and I have a conflict, which hasn't been in a while. Of course, if I say that, that means we got one coming up, But anyway, when we're willing to sit down and ask Baba together, Baba, what should we do? Just around it. Inevitably, one or the other of us we have to say we're sorry, or, when we're willing to sit down together and pray to Baba about whatever the egos are doing, right? Baba will heal that, ease that, but give us both humility to sort that out. And neither of us was looking for a partner, but we met at the center. And I really feel that I don't even know that we'd be together if we didn't have Baba, because we just keep doing that. And it's like those egos, and Baba talked about marriage and partnership like two fists coming together and rubbing their knuckles off, So it is a nice vehicle for, it's a good reminder for me, for anyone who's spiritual. If there's a challenge, it's like, can we pray about this? But it's not as easy with people in the outside world, so. Yeah, it's just, there's so much grace. Baba gives so much grace, and am I willing to follow what I get? Am I willing to obey? That's what I want to say. Thanks.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah.
Dipping in the pool of love is one of my favorite, when weaknesses occur, is one of my favorite quotes as well. And I know when I do something that, all of a sudden I feel humbled, and I don't even want to say ashamed, but, it's like I just want to hide in Baba's skirt. I just want to fall into his arms and hold him close, because I know that I've made it, that my weaknesses have occurred, and and I know he knows me and knows my soul. And just like that, I don't know if Katie's here now, but what she was talking about children is when my daughter was a teenager, she did something happened that was not good, really bad. And it was just out of character for her, but she was 15. And instead of like, go to your room and do this and do that, the punishment, or the way I handled it, was just to keep her close, hold her close, make her, stay downstairs with us and just be close with her, because I knew her soul and I wanted her to feel my love, because she was ashamed of that mistake, deeply ashamed. It almost harmed another person in an accident. And, so I learned from that whenever she did something inappropriate or wrong, I had a brother whose child got into trouble, and they sent him to a military school, and he never recovered. So just like Baba pulls me close, that's the way I handled it with my child as well. Just whenever she misbehaved or whatever, just pull her closer. That was kind of her punishment. I'm sure she wanted to be good so she could get away from me, but anyway, that's all. Thanks.
Beautiful, Rita. Very touching. Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful.
And Paula Roper?
Yeah. When I'm looking at grace dealing with sin and raising our consciousness, I flip back to Baba's image of us. Grace has within its context omnipotence. So there's a very big picture that Baba sees that we don't see. And it's covered by his truth and his divine love. So, I mean, it goes back to the pool of love. But another key part is to accept being sustained by grace. And I think the word accept is a really important word. You know, it's like asking Baba to come live in our hearts and trying to accept, you know, and we go through a lot of ego to get to that acceptance when we've been taught other things in our lives about ourselves, that we're not worthy or whatever we've assimilated in our lives, getting through those sanskaras to say, okay, Baba, yes, I accept your grace. Thank you for your grace. Because he knows. And part of what I've learned in my life is, you know, I can use my parents as an example, but it took me till my 30s or 40s to understand that they did the best they could do with what they had to work with. And that's the way Baba sees us. He knows exactly what each one of us has to work with, and that's his mercy. So, you know, we can't judge other people, and we can't even judge ourselves, because, you know, we're really doing the best we can. And that's why we're here.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. And that word accept, to underline that, there's a lot of work that has to go into being able to accept Baba and his grace.
Yeah, and it was a comment. I thought I had put my hand up. I guess I didn't. Is just one about the Erich saying being a scoundrel? Larry Pester mentioned in the chats that's used sort of flippantly in India, and I heard him say on a video, it's a video cassette. He was given his story up until a certain time. And he said when he first met Baba, he's a kid. He said, I was a glutton. And he was just very honest about, I was a glutton. I love to eat. And that's also like a form of being, you'll just eat, you know. So just wanted to put that out there. Thank you very much.
You know, there's a beautiful quote that from Mara, one of her favorite quotes, where she said, quoting Baba, "Seeds germinate in soft soil. I plant my seed of love in your weaknesses, not your strengths." Seeds germinate in soft soil. I plant my seed of love in your weaknesses, not your strengths. So quite beautiful.
One more hand. Ruth?
Thanks. Hey, you know, when Erich said he's a scoundrel, to me that's a man who knows himself, or a person who knows themselves. The first time I heard that, I just chuckled to myself, because I can recognize that in myself. It kind of made me think of a pirate. I don't know why, but yeah, arg, mate. So yeah, the scoundrel piece is who I am. And Baba comes to help me see that. Anyway, other than that, what was the thing also? There was something Baba said about, you know, so-called good, so-called bad, so-called sinner, so-called saint.
Yeah.
To let us know that it's just so-called. And a lot of times, yeah, I think about that. I don't know that. I can't remember that piece. Maybe somebody else does. But yeah. Thanks.
Excellent. Yeah.
All right, I think we're ready for a moment of silence.
Yeah. Okay. Jai Baba. Wow. What a
Yeah.
thing. You know, he wrote this book in his 90s, and look at how many people it's touched.
Mm.
How much self-inquiry and self-exploration.
I just had one comment.
Yeah.
In the 90s, I was in India in Mandalay Hall, and I had a video camera, and I was there before the, people start talking and Erich comes in, and I asked Ivana if I can videotape the meeting. Erich is going to sit with somebody, and so I said to Ivana, can you ask Erich if I could, tape the meeting and cover the windows so that it will darken the room? So Ivana goes up to Erich and says, Fred wants to know if he can videotape the meeting and you could put the covers over the windows. Well, Erich walks over to me and says, are you a man or a mouse? Can you speak directly to me? Why did you have to ask Ivana? I said, Erich, I'm timid. I was afraid to ask you. But anyway, that was Erich's personality.
That's so sweet.
Beautiful. Yeah. Lovely times.
What I was thinking of, I went back to the book a little bit about the definition of love. And Darwin says, love is not maudlin sentimentality, affection, or an emotion, but something more refined and pure. It's a sense of oneness, illumination, and unlimited freedom and knowledge, a knowing, wisdom, and insight. It's the beam of reality of truth. Love is reality. Reality is perhaps the best word because love causes the veils of falseness, of unreality to fall away. And I think that freedom of that love to get out of the mental constructs of good and bad. I mean, I think that most of us know, I think I know that once I get out of measuring, I'm generally a pretty good person. That's just natural.
Yeah.
There could be some natural bad stuff too, but as well, not to have to worry and measure and just let things unfold the way they are, and knowing that Baba's love, that oneness. I certainly feel that right now, and I feel that tonight.
Yeah.
Very grateful.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of the spiritual life with Baba is getting on your feet again after you've done something selfish or unkind, and not just dwelling on it. I mean, my early years, I had to get back on my feet and get going, and otherwise I would just be sulking and create more mess for myself, by annoying people or whatever. So a lot of it is being able to get back on your feet in spite of doing something that you feel ashamed of or whatever. That is a major part. It can be a major part of the spiritual life with Baba.
Beautiful.
Especially when you're young and you've got some free radicals flying around.
Jeff, you talk about Darwin writing this in his 90s. This was something he was putting together his whole life.
Yeah.
And if anybody who heard him talk at any time during his life, these were the same things he was saying over and over again. And
yeah,
that's what the nice thing about reading this now is that I can almost hear Darwin saying these things.
Yeah, it's a distillation of all of those things that he thought of and all the questions that were put to him, and he had to answer. And yeah, a lot of it came from questions that we asked him over the years. And he, what do you mean by this? What did Baba mean by that? What was your experience here? And he probably would have enjoyed just, Baba's presence and not being, having to get pulled out of his absorption in Baba to answer all these questions. But I thought of him as like a wine barrel, and we're just going and jamming in the sides and putting our cups up against the wine barrel and getting some free wine, which is, you know, he was a container for Baba's wine.
That's kind of how we were with all of the Mandali.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, we just asked and asked and
Yeah.
And they gave and gave and gave again.
Yeah.
You know, Erich would tell the same story maybe 3 or 4 times in 1 week because someone different asked. And he never chided, you know, oh, I've told this to he made it seem absolutely fresh every single time, as if it was the first time he was ever telling a pilgrim that story. Just amazing.
Yeah.
The love that they
I felt they were treating him a little bit like a jukebox, you know, playing their favorite tunes.
I remember Erich telling this little story, not a story, but a little incident. You may have heard this, but you know, one time there were certain Baba lovers that came to take a picture, that came to Merazad, and they wanted to take a picture of Erich along with them. And you know, Erich said, no, don't take picture. I don't want my picture to be taken. And he was resisting that picture to be taken of him with them. And Baba was inside, and he heard this commotion, and he called Erich inside, and he asked Erich what's going on, and Erich told him that, oh, you know, they want to take a picture of myself with them, and I'm telling them no. So Baba looked at him very sternly and asked him, who are you to say no to the picture? How presumptuous of you. And he told him to just go take a picture. And I think that's the reason he keeps repeating these stories and keeps telling them, because he remembers that. And, you know, he basically remembers that, who am I to say no?
Yeah, no, it's exactly good that you mentioned that. That was a very significant thing there. Yeah, who are you not to be photographed? Boy, here's one thing. I mean, there's Erich being a scoundrel, but here's another thing. I said to Bao Churi, because it's in a similar vein. I said to Bao, you know, Baba would kind of hammer and beat on you, Mandali, and you know, yet you had to go on serving him. And I said, if Baba was doing that to me and criticizing me and finding fault with me, I would find it hard to be in the mood to continue to serve, you know, just to be able to kind of rise to the occasion and go on serving Baba. What was the attitude that you and the Mandali had to have around Baba to be able to continue to serve him? And this is what Bao said. Ted Judson was there too. We were in the dining hall in the old Pilgrim Center. And Bao said, this is the attitude that you had to have around Baba. Whether you are right or whether you are wrong, you are always wrong. And we just cracked up, you know. But then he said, if you were, the ego can be perpetuated through being both right or being wrong. And he said, if you were ever really right, you wouldn't be here. You would have realized yourself. So whether you're right or wrong, whether you're right or you're wrong, you are always wrong. I mean, that's another camera angle on this topic. But like I say, the ego can perpetuate itself, he said, through being right or being wrong. But he said, if you were ever really right, you wouldn't be here. You would have realized. So that's how ephemeral the right and wrong is. You know, it just shifts around. And
Jeff,
Yeah.
didn't Baba reveal that Bao had been nervous, had been a mandali in the early time?
Yeah.
I think that's so interesting because he came back, you know, right there to the situation, and then he got beat up. It was interesting to me.
Yeah, and he got to come back and serve Baba twice.
Yeah.
Same-
Yeah.
That's not bad. No, it's.
You know, Jeff,
Yeah, you got any? Oh, go ahead. Wait.
Oh, I just wanted to say, as someone with two free radicals floating around a lot, you know, back to what you said about not getting too bogged down or caught up in the inevitable outbursts as a father that I'll have.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say I found that so helpful because it's something that I've been struggling with. You know, especially during the time of quarantine where things are out of whack and routines are out of whack, and so then there's much more tension and stress and all of that stuff at home. But to not take those moments so seriously, or if you could just repeat what you said again, I just found that so helpful for what I'm personally interfacing as a father at this time in my relationship to Baba. But to not take yourself so seriously is just beautiful about that.
Yeah, and to get back on your feet.
So that's it.
As soon as you can, because, you know, another thing that Baba kind of has helped me with is when I think about my early life, especially my college days, and I feel that shame or that I cringe at some of the things I did, I send Baba's name and love to that, because if I keep cringing and I keep feeling shame, that keeps that stamped on my consciousness. It just reaffirms that. And so when these things come up, I send love in Baba's name to that, so that, you know, I can kind of neutralize those things so that they are not, you know, not jerking me around.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I went for decades with stuff from my past jerking me around. And I just, you know, when it comes up, just send love to that.
Jeff, Elizabeth wanted to say something.
Yeah.
No, Jeff, I wanted to hear the story that you and another lady were speaking about Balji and having to come back twice or something.
Well, he just that he was one of the early Mandali. Baba said he was the guy named Nervous, who must have died back in the 20s and then reincarnated as Balkalchuri.
Oh.
So he got to serve Baba twice as one of his Mandali in the same advent.
So who was Nervous? Because I don't remember any stories about Nervous.
I don't know, except that he wanted to be an actor and everything, and I guess he had the block there. But he was one of the early people when Baba in Pune, when Baba was just starting his advent.
Elizabeth, you can read on Lord Mayhair online. Just put in a search for Nervous, and you can learn all about him.
Okay.
I had just a quick little comment, Jake, for you. You were mentioning taking yourself too seriously. And Baba said that take God seriously and life lightly. And that might be a good little thing to remember when fatherhood is challenging.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a very good point. The challenge is, though, to know how not to associate your actions toward your children as not being the same thing as focusing on God and taking that serious, right? You know, as a father, I want to be loving to my kids. So anyway, your point, your comment is very well received. Thank you for that. It's challenging to know the difference between trying to act like a loving father because I want to take my love for Baba serious, but at the same time not taking my act of love serious.
But I suggest don't act like a loving father. Be loving to your child.
Yeah.
I just had this vision of Shariar, of Baba's dad, Jake, and all dads and parents. And what came to me just now, like this infusion of, like, Shariar sought God. I don't know that he was the most perfect dad. Maybe he was. I mean, I have no idea. But the seeking of God, like that model for the avatar's physical dad, like that you can own as you're a seeker of love and God. To be the perfect, you know, that's I love that right before realization, we'll get rid of our flaws. But that came so strongly just now, and I wanted to share that with you, Jake, and all dads, past dads, future dads, that the avatar's dad just simply knew that he longed and searched for God and did that, and that is a model.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's very affirming of what you just shared, especially because, like in the searching for God, the whole idea of what you were saying, Jeff, of getting back up on your feet, like letting that be the emphasis, the focus, to get back up on your feet, to not get caught up and dragged down in the ego level judgments of what happened, what presided, so on and so forth. So that's really beautiful. That kind of ties everything all together, Cindy. Thank you.
And then modeling that for your children, what greater gift could you give them than preparing God that falls down, gets back up again, that models that with the foundation of longing for God as part of it. Well done. You can check parenting off your bucket list. You're just fabulous.
Well, you know, when you think of you're giving your full attention to your kids when you're with them, I mean, much of your attention, that is love. Even if you're tired or you're not feeling it, but you're surrendering your attention to them and their well-being. There's more love in that than you would ever imagine.
You're so far ahead of the curve, you have no idea.
Yeah. You're so much better than the fathers from our generation, believe me.
I would hope to come back as you and Katie's kid. I'd probably give you a run for your money next lifetime, but like that would be totally okay with me.
Yeah.
Me too. With most of us, Baba was hard up on what kind of parents to give us because we all wanted to be here during his advent. Didn't he say that?
Yeah, he did. Yeah. He said that there were so many trying to get in that, from all different planets because of his advent, that, a lot of us, it's just like, hey, grab a body, anybody, let's just get sorted out later.
Yeah.
Especially
after
I wanted to,
yeah,
I wanted to say too, Jake, that like, I know for myself, sometimes I get caught up in how I think I should be or what is loving or, my stories about that, when really what my challenge is to be human, and with children to own my humanity and my mistakes, because that's how they learn. So, we get mad, we get impatient, we get tired, we get hungry, but then to give insight into those states and how to get out of them as quickly as possible. And, either apologize or just say, hey, I'm really hungry and tired. Okay, now I need to eat. Just to be an example of how to be human is huge. Because my parents certainly weren't. They were like living up to some kind of a ideal of perfection, which they never lived, but they talked. So I think it's important too, just to, embrace our humanity.
And Jake, taking on the comment that was made about Shiriyarji, Baba's father, being an example of fatherhood, he spent so much of his time remembering God and searching for God. He was constantly giving away blankets that Shireen Mai would have, and he, because someone in the toddy shop needed one, and someone else, and so he was always giving away things, and because he was focused on God, and that was what was his great strength. And it's my sense, and I think it's in writing as well, that it was that quality that actually gave him the position of father of the avatar. So it's not easy to do, but what I found in my own life is the more I remember Baba, the better, everything goes better. The more I think of Baba, the more I remember him, the more I give to him. It's all better. So I'll second Shiri Urji as a great model for a father, even though some folks at the time, including his wife, wouldn't necessarily think so.
Well, thank you, Judy and Laka. I appreciate both of your comments. That was very helpful.
Yeah.
You put out a question, you'll get all this, all this sagely advice, whether you want it or don't.
Well, here's another one. Children are given to us for our spiritual advancement, and it will never stop, no matter how old they get. So it won't. And here's something else too, and I think it's more of an aspiration, and it's something that I tried to do when my kids were growing up, and when I had that family life that was it was kind of a long time ago now. But it was, in ancient India, the women were heroines, they were heroes, because they treated their husbands as if he was God. And then what I used to try to do was remember that if I was serving and loving my husband, I was serving and loving Baba and my children. And I'm not saying that I was great at this, but it helps. It's another way to remember Baba, because it's the truth. He is in your children, he is in your wife, he is in your husband, and he is the one that you love. You wouldn't love this person if your heart didn't recognize Baba in your wife's heart. So that's kind of the reality and the bottom line of real relationships, is this love for Baba, and it's an aspiration, I think, but it's something that helps us remember, and to remember that Baba lives with you in your house. He's there, he's with you when, you're cooking, when you're playing with your kids, no matter what you're doing, it's Baba, he's with you. So, I at different times in my life, I've been better at this than at other times, but it's something, that it helped me a lot, and it was real. It was really real for me. I really felt Baba in my husband's heart, and I knew that that was who I was loving in him. And he had his personality and all that, that song that goes, all my impressions have fallen in love with yours. Yeah, that's kind of a great song. They make no bones about succumbing to your allures.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
Also, I wanted to share something from Bauchi. Back when I think it was one of his first trips, and it was back when codependency was just kind of becoming a concept in consciousness, and codependent giving and serving, and it was very confusing for so many people with selfless service, and so I asked him about it, and he said he really clarified it for me by saying, well, Baba doesn't want you to serve the ego in other people. He doesn't want you to serve others' ego's desires. He wants you to serve him in other people. And that just helped me so much with knowing I mean, I still to this day have to go there and kind of clear it with myself, because sometimes serving Baba in that person is directly not doing what they're pressuring you to do or what they want you to do, you know, to really look deeper behind the superficial circumstances of what's going on and look for Baba and say, well, what is the most loving thing, Baba, for me to do? Anyway, that's always been a huge consciousness shift for me and kind of a ruler I live by.
Yeah. No, that's one of the, that is one of the subtleties that we need to see clearly into.
Oh,
Serving.
thanks, Leica.
Well, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was just saying thanks, Leica.
Yeah. Really. We could spend a couple hours on that very topic. There's so many aspects to that.
Yeah, it's really, really deep. It's been several lifetimes, I'm sure, and are and have been.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all. Beautiful insights. Beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, we're just trying to stay afloat.
You're welcome, Joe. Good to see you.
See you. Same.
Jeff?
Yeah.
Good.
What's that?
You hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
How are you doing?
Who, me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm doing all right. You know, if I think about my own self, I'm doing all right. If I think about the collective, I get a whole different experience. You know, it's very dense and heavy. I feel the world. I mean, I don't mean that I'm discouraged, but it's still, it's like it's the winter of the world right now, I would say. But because we have Baba, we're kind of in springtime inwardly, I find. But and this may just be the beginning of when people start running out of money and they get evicted from their homes. We may go into even a deeper heaviness worldwide in the collective. But, you know, like Baba says, he receives our love at the local level. He receives our love, our song at the local level, spiritualizes it, and broadcasts it to the world at large. So if we do whatever we do in our small way, Katie and Jake with the kids, that because they're dedicated to Baba, it gets universalized and goes out to the world, even if you don't think you're contributing to the world situation. We are, because of Baba. One of the greatest agencies of change is by focusing on Baba and doing what we do in our small way, or we might get out on the streets and protest, however you feel impelled and drawn. But because we're dedicated to Baba, then everything we do, which would be really quite small and would hardly get beyond the neighborhood, because it gets universalized by Baba and it goes out. So we are contributing to the world, whether because of Baba. And Adrian's songs, you know, and back in their garage, their garage, whatever, you know, music center. You know, it goes and gets spiritualizes and goes out to the world.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
I'm gonna go out on a big limb here and be really vulnerable and hope that I feel it.
Yeah.
we were talking before about just sin and our weaknesses, and I feel like I'm definitely not the only one that goes through this, but I think my main weakness is like just really brutal self-deprecation. It's like there's so many empaths on the screen. It's just like the spiral of just really like violating my humanity with just cruel thoughts towards myself. And as an artist and a musician, so I put myself out into the world a lot. It's like a constant back and forth of trying to share from the heart, and then it's like the location for all of my, where Bob is working on my ego and all that. It really is within the context of my desire to express myself and my love for Baba and my love for everyone and etc. and so on, and mixed in with whatever. There's so many things, but just I wonder about not even really seeking advice, but just sort of wondering about how we, and I would love to hear from you, Jeff, like how we deal with that sin, that weakness, which isn't really like I'm doing anything to anyone. It's like it's something else, it's like a black hole of just like the in the discourses where, they're talking about the inferiority complex and the superiority complex, and it's all just this push and pull of the ego trip, essentially. But it's just one that really gets me. It's like, and I feel so powerless against it, and like pour my energy to Baba about it, and I just feel even worse about myself.
Yeah.
Well, Adrian, can you give an example, like a little example of the deprecating, what you're talking about that hurts you so much that you do to yourself? Just if you could share some little example of that, because I mean, we all do it, but it's such a huge thing. I know you just from Zoom and your music, and it's like I can't imagine what that might be, but it might be helpful.
My ego's things, like actually a good example is something that I was reminded by the story about Erich not wanting to have his photo taken. Like there was a time a decade or more ago when I was in India and people would compliment me after I'd sing at the tomb, and I was so humiliated by their attention because I was afraid that it would like make me feel good about myself, and that would somehow interrupt my just singing for Baba, and I would just reject their compliments. And
I totally get that.
yeah, and I think now how it manifests more is like no matter what I do outwardly, like I feel this immense sense of pressure of like I'm letting Baba down, I'm letting the world down, or like it doesn't matter what I do. It's like there's such a huge weight and value.
Yeah.
How
I have to,
and then the result of so I think that, I mean, there's a pretty cruel self-talk that I'm not going to say out loud, but
No, and I'm not asking you to. I mean, that's a great example.
Can
and
you,
I can totally relate.
Adrian, I want to say something that maybe is the flip side of your vulnerability. And that is that I know from personal experience over the years that sometimes Baba will take a little bit of those sanskars that you have and magnify them, because you're the one that he's working through to heal other women of the same thing. And I know, it's not with ego that you'll feel it, or that I say this. And I know that Baba will come to you and show you if you allow him, because I know the deep suffering that I had over the years, and would beat myself up and wonder why am I going through this? Why do I have to deal with this? Why? And one day I found a picture. I don't know if you can see it or not. Do you see this, everyone?
Looks
Can you
like
see this?
Baba on the stone.
Yeah, well, let me just share this with you. I've never been to India. I've been with Baba over 50 years. And every time I tried to go, something would stop it and I would have to do some work in social work. And I was really pissed about that. And I would still do it. I know Baba wanted me to do that every single time, even the center. And this one time this is about maybe 10 years ago. This is in my fireplace at home. And I swear to you, I was totally burned out with work and caregiving all my life. I would come home exhausted, working 12, 14-hour days, and I laid on the couch. I couldn't even eat. And my face, when I laid on the couch, looked directly at this stone in exhaustion. And one day I'm looking and I'm saying, what? That looks like Baba's face. And I cried because I knew that all along, Baba was behind all of this, that somehow it was okay because I was doing exactly what he wanted me to do. And he was giving me messages all along that it wasn't me necessarily coming to him, but if I did what I was supposed to do, even if I hated it, he would come to me. And I've had evidence of years later of people that were just associated with me on a small scale that somehow had a breakthrough. Same thing, like I call it, going through Baba's boot camp. You know, Baba put me through boot camp, and, you know, years later, I'll have an experience with someone that I know exactly what they're going through. I can be there for them. I don't have to tell them my story. I don't have to show them pictures. I don't have to do anything but just be there. I know exactly. And Baba's working right through me, and it's him doing it. I'm not doing a darn thing. But I just wanted to share with you that I'm here, and I've used Bach flower essences to help me sometimes get balanced. So if you want to know about that, I'll be glad to share it with you. But Baba is there.
Yeah.
And not only cleaning you, but helping so many people through your willingness to be vulnerable and be honest and transparent about what you're going through. And we love you.
Yeah. No, it's self-compassion. I found along the way, self-compassion. I had to get that as in my toolbox. Self-compassion and self-acceptance, I found, was closer than self-improvement. I had a standard of how I should live for Baba, and I was always falling short. But those are just mental ideas. But self-acceptance, for the better or for worse, and self-compassion.
I'd like to thank you for that, Jeff, and for sharing, Adrian, because when I shared earlier about the darkness, I was in such a spiral of self-deprecation, just me, myself, and I, that I have not felt this dark in, I can't tell you how long. And it seemed insurmountable. I have no suicide plan, but I really did think like death would be better than this. Like when Jeff, when you were describing someone dying and how wonderful it was, even on this call, I was like, yes, type of thing. I know it's not my time anytime soon, so I'm here. But I think that that's so important to remember that we're being used, magnified on a global level to heal these sanskaras. And for women, especially, like whoever you are, you're a woman who's loving God and wants to be an artist and wants to share, and people see you. What I do in my world is like sharing and people seeing me, and whether the feedback's negative, positive, whatever it is. But as the feminine principle needs to be balanced and wholeness with the male as the new age comes in to heal those voices in our own head, no wonder they get so big. And I'm amazed at how much different I feel today after those past 2 days when I thought, well, I'm just on my way. into a spiral that I'll never come out of. And now I feel like, what was I thinking? Like, and it was really negative self-talk about women too. Like, you're disgusting, you gained weight during COVID, all those people that said the negative things, you're right, you really aren't valuable, you really don't mean anything, you can't even feel God, maybe it's all just a sham, like, what are you doing? I mean, and just merciless in that. And then today I'm like, oh. And Jeff, self-compassion more important than self-improvement. That self-improvement, you got to be better, 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 is just what we read all day today. Good, bad, thing, crap.
Yeah.
Briefly shared, thank you. All of everybody, really.
Yeah, things can really get magnified with Baba. And, but that's sometimes when it gets so magnified, you surrender the whole thing.
I was saying that yesterday, like, listening, it's 100% normal, or it's normal to be 100% miserable at times. And that's when you have no choice but surrender to the greater. I mean, I was just saying that quote over and over again. But it must have, I think it look, I'm happy today. And I think I'm all that today. I'm nothing, that means I'm all that.
Yeah.
It's amazing how, like, the more I love myself and feel Baba, the lower my darkness, the lower I go in my moments of despair, depression, and like self-doubt. It's like he gives me more of himself, and then he takes more of himself away. I don't know how it works, but
there's
Yeah,
a
he gives
theory.
you more.
Go ahead.
I was going to say he gives you more. Baba gives more and gives more as we're able to take it. And then when we have more, we're able to go deeper into the stuff, the false self that needs to be cleaned, the stuff between us that needs to be cleaned out. And I just wanted to say before I lost it that, I asked you to give an example, which you kindly did, which I felt prompted to do. And what I heard you say is something that I have experienced, and probably many people here have experienced too, is when you are selflessly involved in giving to Baba. You were talking about singing at the tomb, and you have no thoughts of self. You're just in that wonderful bliss of like giving out that energy, and then all of a sudden somebody goes, "Oh, you were great," or whatever. I always felt that as such a slap, and like I would come out of whatever that blissful state of selflessly giving, and then I'd get self-conscious, and I'd feel kind of, oh, Carol, you couldn't take a compliment, or what. I didn't want to take a compliment because I didn't want to come out of that state. And I find that that's always a little bit of a pendulum swing too, between the dark and the light, and the dark and the light, and it's very familiar to me, and usually would have this negative backlash of, what's wrong with you, why can't you, So I don't know if that resonates, but yeah, what you said resonated with me, so thank you.
Ruth, were you gonna say something?
I was, and I'm trying to pull it into my brain, but there was a book written about St. Francis of Assisi by Kazantzakis, I think his name. Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah.
Right, in the beginning of that book, do you have it? Yes, no. The beginning of that book, he talks about the theory of abraxas, and that theory is that, and I can't put this into word, Adrian, because your feeling is deeper than the words I can pull right now. But the idea is that the deeper we can go, the darker that we see, the more light we achieve. And that's really what our essence is about. And that was St. Francis. And that, I don't know how else to say it, but what a comparison for us because of Baba's mention of Francis. And if he had such darkness and suffering to achieve the light that he had, that gives us hope. That gives me hope, that theory of abraxas. So that's what I was going to say. And I love you. I wanted to say that. Thank you. And
It's
I,
stretching our capacity, right? Ruth?
You know what
It's
it-
stretching our capacity to receive the light. We have to
that must,
exercise. It's like a
yes,
muscle. It's stretching it, and as dark as you can go, bless it, because it'll disappear, just like Cindy said, in a few days or less, and you'll have more room to more.
mine doesn't necessarily go away in a few days or less, but I'm happy for Cindy.
It happens tomorrow because anything's in Baba's world. You know,
That's right.
singing Elmo's World this morning because this little girl had this song Elmo's World, la la la, Elmo's World, but like Baba's world, who knows what's going to happen? Other than love is real.
I apologize. I've been through it so many times. At this point, I have faith that for me, in a few days, it passes. For everyone else, you'll have your own period of time.
I've had it last for years, honestly, and
Okay.
it's not a I mean, like, where I got a lot of traction in dealing with this, it's better now. It's not gone. I have certainly gotten into points where I believe that everybody else has a good shot and is moving forward, but I am somehow the one soul that has, like, just, you know, like, hit fourth plane at some point, and I'm rocketing back down as fast as everybody else is going up. And like, they're all doing great, and look at you. You're just damned, and there's no hope. And some of that moved with, I don't know if, you know, I won't make suppositions for anybody else, but for me, I had some very real trauma that I had to deal with. And that was a really ugly process to work through. And I've had, I wouldn't say it's a done thing, but it can make those things heavier and harder. And then also kind of thinking about, like, okay, let's just say for a moment, maybe I am, right? Like, let's just accept that as a possibility. Baba also said that there's never any backwards. So even that return to stone and coming back up is still progress forwards. And it was still like, if God is a God worthy of being God, then God knows about this already. And it's all part of the plan. So if you're going there, if all the terrible things are true, right, then that's still part of it. And so to trust that, like, to try to love through it and to keep holding on to that, because, like, God is in us as much as anything. Like, how am I the one person who gets an exception from that? That seems pretty, like, that seems like a sparse argument to make. So I've had to kind of, like, talk myself, like, because sometimes when I'm in the really bad place, I can't say, like, oh, well, Baba loves everybody, or Baba's this, but instead, if I'm like, well, how, like, it's like I almost turn the ego on itself, where I'm like, well, how come you're so special that you're the only one that God doesn't love? Wait a minute, you know?
That's actually kind of arrogant. Like, you know, like, that's our pride. Like,
Yeah. You're the only one that's not in the oversoul.
Yeah, like, really, come on. You're the one that goes out, like, out of how many billions of souls, trillions of souls, you're the one who's no good? Please, like, sit down. Like,
you know, and here's the interesting thing is that you know, there you might be going through this, or Adrian, you know, and to me, you are just such beautiful people. You know what I mean? It's like you might have all those thoughts, but how we're able to see, we're not just following the little movie, your mental movie tape that's going on, that's bringing you down. We get to see you. And, you know, and I mean, over the years, people have come to the center and they're so down and everything, but, and of course, you kind of listen to them and go with it and everything, but they are such wonderful people if they could see how they appear from outside. But they've kind of got this inside view that's just looking at, there's a line from Rumi where he says, if I can remember it, you're so focused on the bad stitching on your sleeve that you fail to see the magnificence of your own garment.
So good.
Well, to quote Erich, I am a scoundrel. So,
but he didn't have any bad low self-esteem. He had a high self-esteem, even though he was a scoundrel. Now, if you can make that combination, you're doing good.
That is that's a new goal. I like that way better than trying to just like not have the weakness, but just to like really enjoy myself even with all of the because like I think about we were watching this beautiful video that Bob Fredericks put together of the last called The Last Embrace. Has everyone seen that? It's from the East-West Gathering, right? It was like 1954?
They were doing, I think, I don't know.
Anyway, it's like I think we've all seen it, like footage from this, but it's like slow motion, and he put this like super Catholic like music, and it's really beautiful. And you just see Baba like going like this to everyone's face, you know, like just doing that and just bringing everyone to his heart, but it happens in slow motion, and you can just see like the depth of care that he shows towards each person uniquely and individually, and no one gets overlooked. And you know, like we're watching it yesterday, and it's just like I just imagine, I mean, obviously Baba's God, and you know, he's orchestrating everything, but just like on a human level, just how much he enjoyed every person, how much he enjoyed all like 973 people or whoever that were there that he embraced, and just probably just got such a kick out of all their little foibles and their your bad thoughts and your all of that. I'm sure he just like loved all of it. Just he was so maternal the way that he just embraced every person just truly as his own infant child. It was just so incredibly beautiful to see that. And I mean, it was just such a reminder that like he really is offering his open arms to us all the time, you know. And just even watch the video, I could almost feel his like the softness of his fingers, just like so sweet, like just his long fingers, like, you know, doing that is so beautiful. And I do think too that he kind of cracks the low self-esteem for me is really the manifestation of like an earthquake in my ego, you know, so that he can like get in there and like, you know, reach into my heart more. It's like hurts so good. It hurts so bad and it hurts so good to be loved by Baba.
That's how the light gets in, huh?
Yeah, the light comes in through the wound. That's Rumi.
The tenderness of holding my process. I really appreciate it.
I always think there's that film where that woman, they're all coming and they bow down to Baba's feet, and then they get up and they move on, and there's that woman who comes and she won't get up. That's me. And then Baba looks down at her and he gives her this beautiful, he's young, and he gives her this beautiful look about, come on, you know, it's okay, you can do it, kind of thing. And they help her up. That's me always. I just want to stay there.
Yeah.
But you know, his love always will help me rise again and move.
Yeah, you know, we kind of project the disapproval that we've experienced in growing up, maybe from your parents, but you know, your teachers, your professors and everything. And that gets projected on Baba. I don't feel Baba ever disapproves of anything. He might act like he disapproves when we're going to do something that's not in our best interest. Like a mother screaming at her child who's going off into the street, you know, but there's not a drop of anything other than just love in it. But I mean, Darwin talks a lot about that, but I mean, just accepting that Baba loves and adores us no matter what. I mean, he created us. If he has a problem with any of us, then he's to blame, and he needs to get a therapist. Because no, I mean, he knows why we do things, why we forget them, why we, are all that's an open book to him. And the forgiveness, well, his love and adoring us is always there. And I think in the end, people realize that it's been that way. It's not like it just toward the end of their life, Baba started loving and adoring them. He did it right from the very beginning, with all of their weaknesses and hang-ups and melodrama, all that. He does.
Adrian, I just want to thank you for allowing yourself to be vulnerable and put your real self out there, because look at the discussion that comes from it.
No,
it's the best stuff when you're real and come from your deepest place, and it touches everybody else in our deepest place, and it's just a real gift, hopefully for you and all of us. It is
definitely, yeah. It's really beautiful. Like
it would be.
Thank you for saying that.
It'd be interesting to take a poll and see how do you really feel about yourself, and ask everybody, I mean, to see how we view ourselves. It would be very illuminating, because most people would say, probably, I feel inadequate. I feel like everybody else is living the great Baba life and they're remembering him, but I'm not, and I'm caught up on this and that. And I bet everybody's, got very much the same, I mean, in different extremes, but the same kind of feeling of inadequacy and not quite measuring up. But at the same time, luckily, we all have a feeling like it's all right. Baba loves us no matter what. We have that in there too. Thank God.
There's that story in That's How It Was, where I'm sure you all who spoke to Eric, you probably said this a lot, but just there's this one thing of like, the more you love Baba, the more you feel like you aren't loving him enough.
Yeah.
Like, it's so mean. It's so beautiful. It's like, yeah, that just made me think of that, Jeff.
Yeah.
Adrian, I wanted to share this story. I mean, I've shared it before at times, but I was on the porch with Mara. Everyone was there and on the porch. And this book was passing around, and people were talking, but the book was passing. And I passed it to my friend. I reached around her like that, and all of a sudden I hear Mara very deliberately say, "Rosalie, I am talking to her. Have you no manners? How were you brought up?" And it was just like, I just say she lanced my childhood, because I'm lucky I'm walking and talking. And I was screaming out. It was silent, inwardly, screaming Baba's name. And I don't cry easily, but I just fled, but totally silent. And then I tried to get away, but someone was blocking the way. But, I think of that, there's whatever I absorbed from the group, my family group, whatever, my parents and that, was just painful. It's painful on some level. And she just was compassionate. I wouldn't say I like sprang forward, cured or whatever, but it shocked me. It was like having something lanced. She was just, her purity just, And I knew everyone on that porch, it could have been them, you know. And in a way, with what you're saying, it could be anyone, you know, but you're feeling it, you know, and doesn't feel good. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's you know, a Westerner came up to Monty and said, you know, and she was depressed, and you know, and Monty saw her and said, "But don't forget, it all has a happy ending."
Yeah.
If we can endure it, if we can hang in there long enough.
I was going through some of this yesterday. It was like really, I was like having it, and Alan was like telling Alan, like, I'm freaking out, I'm having a hard time. He's like, Adrian, you're gonna die. It's okay, you're gonna die. It's actually really comforting. Like, you're right, I'm gonna die. I'm gonna die.
Those are words that can get you killed.
You're gonna die. Like, I'm like, what? You're gonna die. And he looked kind of nervous the second time, but I was into it.
That reminds me of a scene. Bao Kalchuri, you know, I was on my way out of India, and Bao Kalchuri was close to dying, and he was in the intensive care, but somehow I got in to see him, and I you know, I thought, this is the last time I will ever see Bao Kalchuri, and he's lying there. He looks like he's right on the verge of dying, and I'm over him. And I'm saying goodbye to him because I'm going back to the West. And I've just, oh, this is, you know, I'm really having to fight back the tears. And Bao looks up at me and says, Jeff, it's all just an illusion. I mean, of all the things to say, Jeff, it's all just, I mean, he's like there, you know. I mean, and I had to, well, it was the last thing I thought I would hear. But he put you know, that was the truth. And I was saying goodbye after, you know, 40 years or whatever, of, you know, being so close to him. And then I'm saying goodbye, and he just comes up with that remark. So I would just remind when Alan said that, you know, you're going to die. I hope it makes you feel good. Very funny.
There's a time and a place for that kind of comment, I guess.
He was really freaking out. So.
All right. Just...
No, but, no. No, if we, but you know, like this, you know, the last message that Baba gave on the alphabet board in 54, when he talked about internal links. These internal links that we have here in keeping in touch with each other and sharing ourselves with each other, is going to be our support system for the next 700 years. You know, it's not like we're operating in independence. You know, all this is a valuable support. And, you know, Erich was, I mean, some of you have heard this, but there was one guy named Dick Anthony, who wrote a book called Spiritual Choices. And it was about how religions and cults form and everything. And he said to Erich, is Baba going to become a religion? And Erich said, Bob was adamant that it not become a religion. He says, well, how can we keep that from happening? And he said, if his lovers would get together in small groups and share their He said mystical experiences. It could be averted. Sharing our inner life, because you can't make a religion out of this. You know, I mean, it's everybody's too unique. They're coming at a different angle. You can't codify it. You can't make a dogma out of it. And this is, and he said earlier on, he said that the Sufism, this is the kind of like this Sufism group that groups that happen kind of parallel to Islam, the formation of religion. This is the underground, whatever, not what do you call it? The not transmission, but the not legacy, but it all this will what do you call it? The anyway, this is how it goes on. There's a party after this party. And there's a party after that one, and we're going to be getting together for the next 700 years in all different ways.
I love that. That is so awesome.
Yeah. But it's sharing, you know, what we're experiencing, not the metaphysics and the rituals and ceremonies and all that. It'll keep at least one aspect of this very, very human and not hierarchical, you know. Keep it that way until Baba comes.
I mean, really, it's unreligionable when you share your individuality.
Yeah.
The experience is beautiful.
Yeah.
Word unreligionable.
I just
unreligible is a word.
I like it.
In psychology, it's called immediacy. Like if we just talk about truth in the moment, we can't go too wrong.
Yeah. No, it's beautiful.
You know, I was going to bed the other night, and then I basically I had the thought that, you know, is this how, you know, this is how when I go to sleep like this is how I leave this body. This is how I just wake up from one body to another body. And then it kind of like Baba flashed it to me, like the way that you say, flashed it to me. I like that word, that phrasing. He said, you can, you know, just the way that you can see me on film or in pictures, you can see me right now in real life time. If you just look, I don't know how to say it. It sounds really general, but if you look at me right now, look within, and I realize that there's this place inside of me. I don't know where it is, but I can't point to my body, but you can look at Baba right now, right where he is in all things, and you can see sort of almost like he's just almost like how he's there with you, you know. He just that you see him in real life time. Like if someone's going to say like, hey, Meher Baba's going to be on live stream today at 5:00, it's like, yeah, you could just see him right now. You have that, all of us have that capacity to live stream Meher Baba.
That's what Baba taught. Darwin talks about the eye of the heart. There is a heart that's at the heart level. There's an eye at the heart level where you can see Baba face to face. You know, and he's right there. You know, he's just as if he's, you know, in 3 dimensions. You know, not even live stream, but in, you know, he's there.
Yeah, he's right. It's
better. And he's been there always, adoringly watching us, really. And it's not like he just spot checks us now and then. Oh, I wonder how Alan's doing. Well, I'll go and check. And then maybe while there, I'll check on Adrian too. You know, I mean, he's there. I don't know how he does it, but he's there present with everyone.
You sound like Santa Claus,
Yeah,
where he like
but
goes to their houses like one at a time.
yeah, no, he can do it. But and that heart does open eventually, and you can see him.
Yeah, that's
And
like the word spiritual bypass. I've kind of grown up recently with that word as being something negative, but I think in terms of Darwin's phrasing,
yeah,
I sort of took it as like when I look through that spiritual heart, it's like there's a translucency. I don't know if that's a word, but it's translucent. So the sort of the dirt on the mirror becomes kind of wiped off for a second, and there he
yeah.
is, and it's like bypassing the thoughts, the gymnastics of how do I see, just kind of in my corner looking down with my hands over my face when I just need to like kind of simply go to him, like, right there in that moment, to completely available in
Yeah.
I'm speaking in these terms, but it's like it's very much possible for every single one of us beyond the framework of how bad I feel about guys, I've been feeling like Adrian was saying, I was just looking at myself and feeling really like crummy about myself and what I think I'm doing. And I really would rather be acting, and I'd rather be doing a lot of things. I'd rather get a haircut. I'd rather look nice and, have a nice body. And I'd rather, I have all these thoughts about where I think I need to be and who I need to be. And Bob was just crushing me every day. And just people are telling me how horrible of a job I'm doing, customers. But that I'm actually really helping the whole company. On the other side, everybody's like, "You're doing great," and I'm like, "Okay, well, Bob is just, he's just in all of it, and I can't assert that like oh man, this and that. It's like I don't know what to believe anymore. It's just I have to go to
Yeah.
him. It's just desperate. I have to.
Yeah.
I have no other choice."
Well, the funny thing is that when we go to check ourselves, instead of checking the love that we are, we check our massive impressions, and we get our reading. Oh, how am I doing today? Oh, I'm overcast. Oh God, that's a storm. Or hey, there's a little sun coming out, or there's an epidemic. I mean, why do we check our sanskaras to get a reading on how we are? When we can, because we are really love. But it's hard to get the consciousness from taking a snapshot of where our sanskar configuration at the moment and saying that's me, instead of turning the camera around and seeing the love that we are. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's crazy. I mean, it's been habitual. How are you doing today? Oh, I'm depressed. I'm just looking at the sky of my impressions, and it's overcast. And yet we are, well, Larry Pesta is very good at this type of orientation. But you try to get above the clouds where, the sun is suddenly brilliant and beautiful.
Well, it's
But
almost like when I'm practicing, it's like for example, for me, it's like I really feel like there's like shame that comes up for me.
yeah,
So I'm sitting there, I'm feeling this shame, and it's physically overcoming my body, and my sensations are overcome with it. But at the same time, what I mean by the translucency is like the light of Baba. I'm looking at him through
yeah,
that. So as I'm focusing on him, I still have the thoughts. I'm still feeling really bad about myself, and I really feel horrendous. But I'm still focusing on him, and it
yeah,
starts to dissolve on its own. And it just there's a transparency more to it. And then if I try to figure it out, though,
yeah,
then I get wrapped up in it, and it just feels real overwhelming.
yeah, yeah. You look away from your bundle of sanskaras over at Baba, you might say,
Yeah.
instead of I mean, a lot of people, they'll see Baba like at the end of their bed, And the moment, you know, like, I mean, people at the center, they've seen there's Bob at the end of the bed. The moment they think, oh, I'm seeing Baba, bam, he's gone. Because you can't bring yourself into the picture. You have to just see him looking away from yourself. The moment you, I mean, and Gene Shaw used to talk about the moment you think about yourself, bam, Baba goes. Because you can't, there can only be one person in the room, you know? And, you know, like a really kind of postgraduate experience of this, I asked Merwan Jesawala, who would spend a month at Marizad, you know, every year from his work. And I said, well, you're sitting in the Mandalay Hall with Baba, you know, just hour after hour, day after day for a month. What were some of the thoughts and feelings that were going through you when you're in the room? You know, how are you, what are you feeling in the way Baba's relating to you and reacting? What was going on in there? He said, he never even thought of himself. I said, what? You didn't even have any thoughts about yourself? Nope. No self-reference. You know, he was over into Baba, looking away from himself, and he wasn't like us, you know, kind of, oh, I wondered, that look from Baba, was he disapproving of me, or how did he feel? The self-reference has been eliminated from the picture. Can you imagine? I mean, that's where we're heading eventually. Baba's going to, that's the way Kitty was. She was like over into you. I couldn't get her to get interested in herself. She would just kind of, you know, oh yeah, I'm fine. And then we're over into me. It's amazing. Hey, well, I think I might have to eat some dinner. I mean, you in California, I mean, you guys are just...
Jeff,
Let's get started.
thank you so much, everyone. Thank you,
Yeah,
Jeff.
but I mean, I have to go, but who is it, Robin, or is it Ruth or is it Alan?
I think it's both Alan and I are co-hosting,
Okay.
if that's what you're asking.
Oh, yeah, because
Yeah.
you've got Thea there. He's got a gold mine of all this kind of stuff. And hey, fantastic though.
What is that? Is that a dog? A kitty? What's a kitty?
Every morning when I wake up, it's because Bella is screaming from the other room. Growls really loudly, and I imagine Baba. I'm like, I don't want to get up, so I just imagine Baba like comforting her and like petting her. It's like I just imagine him in there like walking around her bed, and sometimes she'll stop.
She has dementia.
Okay. Anyway.
Oh.
She doesn't remember what she is at the time. But when I hold her, she...
Thank you. Yay, Baba.
Jay Baba.
I'm gonna mute her.
Well, I think I'm going to have some soup. So I'll say,
What kind of soup are you gonna have, Ruth?
well, I'm going to have Italian wedding soup.
Ooh.
Ooh, I know.
Does that mean there's pasta and vegetables?
Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am. I'm delighted. I'm a glutton. No.
I love it.
I may go into gluttony, though, after the soup. I don't know.
She's getting married soon.
Who are you marrying?
And that's my husband saying I'm getting married soon. Look at this hair on him. Huh? Yeah. Turn
Jay
around.
Baba. Good night,
Yeah.
you all. Thank you.
Jay Baba.
Marilyn.
Jay Baba.
Baba. Blessing
Jay Baba.
you all.
Blessing to you, Marilyn.
Bye.
And bye, Marilyn.
Audrey, it's great to see you.
It's good to see you too.
Adrian, I'm sorry. My brain has gone south.
I was like, Audrey, that's cute. I think she's
Andrea.
Take it. Oh, Andrea. Yeah.
That's what I was saying. Yeah, I haven't seen Andrea for a while. That might be why. But anyway,
That's the name Audrey.
Audrey. My sister's name was Edry.
Ooh.
What? It was Welsh, I think.
Oh.
Uh-huh. It was from an old...
Oh, go ahead. It was from
It was
what?
from a penny, what do they call them? Penny Dreadful. It was from a penny dreadful that a great aunt was reading, and the name of it was Edry's Legacy. And it was about, I think it was a biracial book.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, right. So anyway, that
Idris Elba.
yeah, she got named after that book.
That's awesome.
Check it out.
Oh yeah,
Ooh.
that's from Anne McAvoy.
Anne McAvoy gifted us this stone.
Anne,
Let me tell the
gorgeous.
story. Put me on.
You're on.
Oh,
Go, you're on.
okay. The story behind that is that I forget how I got it, but I got it because I just am a magnet for Baba things. And it had been on Kitty's desk. It's a stone with a picture of Baba on it. It's covered with epoxy or something. It had been on her desk for many, many, many years. So you can imagine all the wonderful Baba stories that it's just taken into itself. And I sent it to them because I've forgotten your name because I'm old and don't have a memory.
Adrian.
But I sent it to them because you had said you were in Kitty's room and it felt so wonderful. You just felt the vibes from the walls. And I thought, I got to send him that. So that's the story.
That's really sweet. Thank you very
Really
much.
sweet. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah, this stone, I was actually with my mother because this was sent to.
We moved.
We moved, so
it
I
went
had
to a different address.
So I had to go pick it up, but in doing that,
it was like on his way to his mom's house.
I went to go see my mom, and she's like, "What's that? What is that?" And it was the day that I had given her these books of stories of Baba, and she's like, "Wow!" And she like picked the stone up, and she put it to her heart, and she was just holding it like that for a while,
Oh my God.
and then she kissed it, and then she was like, "That's a really nice stone," and I was like, "Thank you!" Like, wow, like, geez Louise.
I've done that myself with that stone. That's a beautiful story.
Yeah, yeah. So
you need to correct your address with the gateway.
yeah,
They're still open.
yeah, we need to.
We should.
We should.
Yeah, because that's how I got your address.
Yeah, we were actually gonna visit in February, but then, and then my address would have been updated at that point, but it got, we got.
Yeah, who knows what February, what year it'll be.
Yeah, yeah. So, well, we'll see where it goes, but yeah, it was really kind of you. I really cherish this because I really feel like I wish I could be around Kitty right now, in my life. I'm sure we all do, but yeah, I feel very drawn to Kitty especially. So that's a very sweet gift of you. Thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome.
Yeah, I appreciated what Jeff had to say about this connection that we have. It many a time I have come away from being on this Zoom Baba time feeling like I've just been at the center. Yeah. And I don't want to leave, like we're all in the original kitchen and it's time to go to bed. I just don't want to go. It's always this wonderful sense. So I'm so grateful he brought that up about the connections that we're making now and the connections we've made in the past. Baba, last thing saying, talking about inner connections. Yeah. I'm going to hold that one close.
Have you read much of what Don Stevens wrote about that? He wrote like a whole book about that, the internal links.
I haven't read it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I think it's called The Gift of Intuition. I'm not sure if that's the exact one, but
I'll have to look. I think I have most, so I'll look in my bookshelf and see if I've got it. Yeah, I know my husband reads them all now. I've stopped reading and he reads everything that comes in, so I have to go through his mental, The library. Yeah. His little cards. See if he can remember that one.
Oh, wow, that was great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you talking? Because you're muted.
There we go.
There you are.
I don't know how that happened, but okay. It's been a very strange progression over the last
25
year.
people.
Oh, this is everybody.
Hmm?
No.
Go ahead, Thea.
Okay. So it's been a very strange progression over the last year change, something like that, because I went from like going down and volunteering being near the center a whole bunch and having a very overt and active Baba life, and all of my pictures and relics and whatnot that I ended up leaving with Gabe Wood because it just for some reason didn't feel right to take them with me as I left at that time. So now I am in the Boston area and I have a single picture of Baba, and it is this tiny little thing that was the only thing that would fit in my bags when I left, and it's something Mara gave me.
Yes, I have that frame from Mara too.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. It's a beautiful, beautiful one.
And it's funny because I remember I was 6 years old, and it was the one time that I met Mara. Well, I was there for like 3 months or 3.5 months. So it was a very long period, but it was like, it was that chunk of time. And then afterwards it was over. And I think it was the last, she asked me if I'd wanted to know when it was the last time I would see her. And I said, yes. And she said, then that time came and she told me. And I didn't want to believe it. And then she told me that, and I asked, well, like, would I see Monty? Because she was like my best friend as far as I was concerned. And she looked at Monty and said, yes, you'll see her one more time. And that was also accurate. I got to come back and see her for one more visit. And I was quite inconsolable about it and bargaining and trying to figure out all the ways that it could not be. And she was just kind of very matter of fact about it. And we left that trip to Marizad. And as we were going, Monty came running after me and had that for me. And said that, and I was kind of a little shit about it and said, well, asked if Baba touched it because everybody else that I knew had something that Baba had touched. And she said, no, but Mara wants you to have it. And I've been reflecting a lot lately because I go to church now a lot, which is something I had never done before ever in my life. I was an overt anti-Christian is what I would almost phrase it as. And now I love my church that I go to. It's like a UCC church. And I've gone from like, everything was Baba and like, Jesus is cool and all, but whatever about Christianity, to now I like am very embroiled in Christianity and am like, have a very quiet and small relationship with Baba. And I find myself wondering if Mara knew that I would need a picture this small to carry with me. And because it was like such a like, wait, actually give this, like I was Thias then, like give this to Thias and like insist on taking it. And the frame's cracked. I've tried to change the glass because it's broken. But the gel from the picture has bonded to the glass, so there's just no doing anything about it. And it's my one picture of Baba at the moment. So it's a very strange, like, what those items do. I've wondered, like, what will happen to, like, I've got a suitcase full of stuff that I associate, it was my altar that when I left Brooklyn 2 years ago, something like that. So it's, those items have such an interesting life and history, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, thanks for sharing that. Yeah. Like, I feel like I try to like tone down how much Baba stuff I have, but it just all ends up back on the like I just can't stop collecting Baba images but I'm curious about what your experience with, like, what led you to start going to church and what your connection with that is. Just pure, like, genuine wonder.
I have had looking back now, I can make some sense of this, I think. The short story I get, how to phrase this. I had a falling out with a family member who was very active in the Baba community and religious kind of character about it. Major falling out. Like, we haven't spoken in about 2 years. And at the same time, I was having what I would term like the most magical period of my life in terms of experiencing like what I can't, like, like I'd like to call them miracles, but it was just more like everything just sort of, like, it was just so clear how much God's hand was on everything at every moment and how much it was in everything. And that period lasted like, sometimes it's still going on, but it doesn't have quite the same like dramatic flair that it did. Prior to that, I have wandered through most of the religions at some point. Like, I've been to Amritsar for the Sikh thing. I did the Buddhist pilgrimage. I really connected to like the Mahabharata and Ramayana when I was a little kid. Like, Arjuna was my hero. I think like my AIM handle was Drona, like DRONA, right? Like, I was just obsessed with these stories from that time period. And then in my 20s, I really got into like Sufi Islam, not Sufism reoriented, but like spending a lot of time at the Valley of the Saints, real focus on like kind of mystical and the exaltation experience of divinity, as opposed to the like very metered, focused, studious kind of approach that I was used to from my family. And I ended up back in New York to like take apart my life there after walking out of my job and everything. And a very, very dear friend who I love a great deal invited me. I invited them to go to a wedding as a friend because two good friends were getting married, and they asked me if I go to church, and I was just like, yeah, sure, why not? I haven't like been to church in forever. And I went in to like the PlayStation Theater off Times Square for like a Hillsong worship service. And the first song there's a song that goes, and as you speak, a billion galaxies are formed. It's like one of the lines. And I was just like, well, that sounds like the Breaking the Silence, all right. And like every single song that they had going sounded like, well, first I'd just been at Bhakti Fest, and I swear it was like I just could feel myself glowing with the degree of love that was in the music there. And then I ended up in this Hillsong worship thing, and it's like every song they were songs about Jesus, but they were also very clearly songs about Baba in this like evangelical Christian setting. And then the pastor gets up and gives this wonderful sermon about like riding a donkey into the Grand Canyon and how he is obstinate and a sinner, and like, but not in a judgy way, but just in a like trying to love Jesus and just failing and just owning it as like kind of an example. And I was so amazed at the vulnerability and honesty of it. That, I went back for every month I went back, that whole month I went back with her before I went down to the center and was there for 3.5 months or so. 3.5, 4 months, something like that. I think I left in February, somewhere around there. And then like when I was in the South, I didn't feel comfortable going to churches because I am like non-binary trans. I don't pass. I have no intention of ever passing. Like, my self-perception at this point is that I'm both male and female and neither. I wanted to from that period, I kind of I wanted to find a church group where I could, I also sat down and read the New Testament and discovered, I was like, wait, I actually really freaking like Jesus a lot. Like, and like, this sounds like, and it just felt like I've always loved stories about the Avatar, and it was just more stories that I hadn't really sat and read. And so I've been very, it became important when I came up here to have a church again. And so I went looking for it, and I went to like probably 20 or 30 churches, and I just started settling into this United Church of Christ church in Somerville, Massachusetts, like right off Davis Square. And I remember the first time I went, I pulled up and they had this giant Black Lives Matter sign and a rainbow flag. And I was like, well, it's a good start. Like, and I've like talked about Bob, like I've been very overt about my background with Baba and that portion of it, and my perspective on like global religions as like lenses on the same material. And everybody's just like, yeah, cool. And like, it's not like a cool, like, except this is the one. They're like, oh, great. And like, one of them was like, who's on the board, I found out later, is like, yeah, when I like joined this church, part of my covenant was that I would go to a different type of worship service at least once a quarter, and that's part of my like commitment for being in this church, was that I don't just go to this church or necessarily just Christian stuff. So I mean, UCC is also like a little different than like the Episcopal church that I went to, or I mean, the Episcopal church is great too, but it's also different going in places like, the Boston area or in the New York area, or versus where like I was as a kid in rural North Carolina, where people would like beat me up and be like, say you love Jesus. I'm like, well, I do, but also like, this isn't exactly what Jesus said to do.
Totally agree with your approach here, guys.
Yeah, like, didn't he say something about turning the other cheek? I don't keep hitting me, I guess, whatever. So yeah, it's a baffling thing for me. And also I say that, and I also like woke up really, really early and meditated for a while and then fell back asleep in this church today. So, these things happen.
And here you are.
Yeah. In a church form of some sort. So
whatever it is, I'm so glad you're here.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like Baba, do you feel the present, like, okay, because when I think about Jesus, this is like my experience with Christianity is that like, I used to go to church with my grandmother and I would just be like, I don't feel Jesus here. I was like looking for Jesus and I didn't ever find Jesus. And then when I found out about Baba, I kind of like lost interest in Jesus, just kind of like, well, I mean, it wasn't like I lost interest. I just, it was more like I went to Catholic high school and I kind of had a relationship with Christianity as like, I knew Jesus was like, this was what he said he was. I believed that he was like God manifest. Like I understood that on a deep level, on whatever level I could. And then I just had no real interest in like pursuing that once I found out about Baba. And then over the past like a few years ago or a couple years ago, like Baba, like it almost became a thing of like, I don't care about Jesus. Like it almost became like that. And then Baba, like one day I was listening to the gospel music on like a on the radio. It just came on. I was like, oh, this is good. And they were singing about like Jesus on the cross. And I just was like, oh my God, like that was Baba. And it just hit me so hard. And I just started weeping. And I still like just thinking about what Baba on the cross, I mean, in Jesus on the cross, it's just like that brought this connection to me back, brought a connection back to me with Baba as Jesus. But it's like my focus is Baba. I don't know, it's so deep, like the connection with the avatar, just like as the avatar manifests in all these different forms and beings. Like I went through a period of feeling like really connected to Ganesh and feeling really connected to Shiva, but it was always like, this is Baba. It's Baba. Like that's my point of reference is Baba, like Baba when he was this, Baba when he was that. But then on another level, like time doesn't really exist, and like it's like all happening at the same time. I don't know.
What was your question? You were saying, do you?
Well, I guess like I'm wondering, like, yeah, like what the point of reference is in terms of like the connection with Jesus, identity, or yeah, I don't know.
I think maybe the way I describe it, maybe the best way to describe it is that like so there's like Jesus any reference to Jesus straight up irritated me for a long time, which is like most of my life. Just for context, it was just like, oh God, come on, like whatever. And I found it like annoying. So I think in one level, like I've looked back and been like, of course, finding acceptance and love there is where I would have room for growth, because I was so resistant to it. Like, obviously that's where I'm going to have to do work, like in retrospect, and find acceptance. And also, and like find connection. But like now, like I've also had periods where I've like looked at Baba and felt like I was just looking at a fairly nice looking Iranian man. Like it's not, I remember being like, oh my God, this is my beloved, this is the person I love, like this is the one. And I have things where I'm like, he just kind of looks like a stranger sometimes to me. And that was like very upsetting to me because I remembered and missed the other thing. But I like the internal connection didn't go anywhere. And like, in fact, it almost got like, that was like, got stronger to where it was like a recentering maybe on the like the Baba or the Jesus or it's like God that is not the body, but God that is in and around everything. And so like that's been a big part of my experience now. And I'm like, I'm it's really hard to like put into words. Like internally it makes a lot of sense to me, but like vocalizing is challenging. Yeah, it's like Baba, the physical form was that physical form and was here, and that was the physical manifestation. Dropped the body in 1969. We've got like another 50 years or whatever for the as if thing, all those numbers we know, right? But there was this like refocusing on like no, actually it all is that, like actually, like really actually there's the whole thing is that. And so like if I'm resisting or I'm like this one portion of it is not God, then actually that's like my own ignorance to like be looking away from that spot and to be like, that isn't it. And so now it's almost like, I almost think about, because I also had like a little stint in paganism that is still kind of active in some degree, but it's like, I'm starting to think of it more as like if there's an umbrella, right? Like there's the point that's the God that's in everything. And then a step down, there's like the God that's the manifestation as an avatar. That's like the personality of Rama and the personality of Meher Baba and the personality of Krishna and the personality of Buddha, like Jesus, it's Muhammad, etc. Right? And then a wider portion of the umbrella is you've got like personalities of like Artemis and the personality of Athena and and Ganesha, and those become like, all of them still are that one point, but you're just looking at like one, like Ganesha being what, thieves, artists, musicians, and travelers, right? You're looking at the divine aspect that focuses on that. Artemis being like for the femme and the huntress and the moon, like, so you're looking at the God aspect that is that. But all of those are aspects of the whole, is kind of how I'm. So like for me to move to the like the whole and to be kind of looking at the whole thing, I had to sort of let go of any one point and like expand to embrace it, if that makes sense. And that meant accepting portions I prior was not willing to accept. And that's an ongoing process right now for me. I think that's the best way I know how to phrase it. I hope that made it some semblance of sense.
That's cool. It's beautiful.
Yeah, that was beautiful. I think you kind of nailed it there. I think you just brought in a lot of things, and you know, the archetypal pieces that we all feel so deeply. You're speaking to that, and I'm really grateful. Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And it's also beautiful just as with your gender identity too, because it just shows like I don't know, it's like the way that you're speaking about it, like cracking open the form, just the idea of formedness, you know, and like the stagnancy of like gender. Like this is an interesting like anecdote that a friend, okay, so Elisa Genovese told me this, so this is not my own personal experience, but that she was at Mehrabad with the women Mandali, and they were talking about Baba and saying something about how feminine Baba was in this picture that they saw, and Mani said, well, she said something like, we never thought of him as a man. He was never like a man. He was like, the way that she said it kind of was something like what I just said, but it was so beautiful. I was like, because I think of Baba as definitely being like male and female, like very feminine, very masculine, like perfectly both. Oh, I don't know what Alan's doing. He's making a lot of noise. But yeah, I don't know. It's just something beautiful that I've thought about with Baba a lot recently. Just that even in the form of the avatar, like the singular form. I mean, he has to come millions and millions and millions of times in order to truly like manifest himself. He has to come in every single type of form, like in order for us humans to even catch a glimpse of what God like it's every single tiny aspect of like a infinite like fractal supernova prism thing that's like infinite, and it'll never stop because God will never be defined by there's no completion point. And I think that, yeah, I just feel like it's something really beautiful in that. And I think it's really generous to be able to see Baba as all forms, even just to like catch glimpses of it, you know, like just to catch little, like the way you described it is so beautiful, because it gives us a chance to just remember that even though his form is beautiful to me, it's also just his form. And I said this to Alan all the time, like I don't want to miss him when he comes back, because I'm so attached to Meher Baba's beautiful form and his beautiful mustache and his beautiful everything and everything he said and his silence and his everything. And then I like miss out when he comes back as looking like something else, or I'm too, you know, like how so many Christians or Muslims are, you know, so convinced that that's it, and then they miss out on Baba, the good fresh oats, you know. I don't want to miss out on the oats.
Yeah, I've got there was a little bit in New York where it seemed like when I'd walk around, I had this sense of like every single person being a mask and Baba being behind all of them. And I'd ride the train and wonder, like, is that you? Like, or is that you there? Or is that all both you? And I miss it so much because it just felt like, yeah, that was like, there was this little patch of time where like I was out of my gourd in New York City and I loved it. It was great. It was like just wandering around, just love drunk all the freaking time.
It's such a great place to be out of your gourd.
I might go back. I haven't been back to New York in a couple of years. I miss it. When I left, Baba told me the day I left, Baba said, "Leave right now, or you will never leave the city." And I was like, "All right, I wasn't ready to commit to it. Now I think I probably would just be like, yeah, all right, fine. That's where you want me. That's where you want me." But But
conversation is so beautiful. Also, have you seen the Padre video? There's this awesome Padre video where he talks about, it just reminded me of that, where someone asks him like, well, what if Baba, so you obey Baba no matter what? And he's like,
I'm
yeah,
terrible at that.
something like that. And then they're like, well, what if Baba asked you to move to New York? And he'd say, I would do it. I would go.
Yeah.
And then I would tell Baba, if I didn't like it, I would say, Baba, I don't like it. And then he would, and then, you know, I thought it was really sweet. He's like, anyway, I just thought of that because it's New York.
I love New York when I moved there. It was like, I know I lived there in a prior lifetime. I adored it. It was like, I walked around that city and it was magical. It felt like, yeah. I don't know, like, you know that feeling when like your heart cracks open and then you like weep?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my favorite part, even though it's like terrible.
Have you watched this show called Love on the Spectrum?
Mm-mm.
It is soul crushing. It is so good. It is
Yeah.
like, we just finished watching it. It's on Netflix and it's about
What's it called?
Love on the Spectrum. It's like a sort of reality series about people on that autism spectrum trying to find love.
Mhm.
It's like they're so beautiful, and you just feel Baba like in the vulnerability and the innocence and the difficulty of being on the autism spectrum and the loneliness, and then this, I don't know. It's so. I had to every episode. I had to like stop and like shake and yell because it was it affected me so much, and we loved it. So I recommend it.
I will have to watch that. It's
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, like yeah. It's
Feel free to text if you're having strong feelings and you're like.
I don't know if I have your number. I might. Let me see if I do.
We're recording. So
I miss. I